Chapter 2847. Chen Zhao's control of his strength was quite good. It wouldn't cause damage, but it was still dangerous. As expected, in less than 10 minutes. Felwood Sko called again. He was also very confused about this tsunami. It was too much of a coincidence. Of course, he didn't make too many guesses. He just thought it was a coincidence. How much longer? Chen Zhao asked. Soon, Shilai Wendy answered. He also wanted to be fast, but he wasn't sealing a person or a magical beast now. This was a god, a true god. The difficulty of this seal was far beyond that of other sealing targets. Even if it was only for 3 days. Shilai Wendy had to use all his knowledge in these 3 days. Moreover, he was only good at sealing. At the moment, hundreds of bright red runes had been carved on the ground. Shilai Wendy had imprinted these runes with magic. Shilai Wendy had expended a lot for these primitive runes. But he had to finish the last part. Otherwise, Chen Zhao would kill him. Mr. Chen, put this god on the ground. Shilai Wendy still maintained an appropriate amount of respect for Ares. No matter what, Ares was still a god. This was a human's respect for a god. Chen Zhao clearly didn't have much respect for this loser. He casually tossed Ares onto the ground. Ares snorted softly. He'd already regained consciousness. But he didn't communicate with Chen Zhao at all. He didn't beg or threaten. Losing was an unforgivable crime for him. He'd always existed as a victor. He was the god of war, the beacon of victory. But now, he'd lost. To him, this was undoubtedly the greatest irony. He'd once been able to give victory to war. But now, the god of war couldn't obtain the final victory. He waited calmly and accepted his fate. Of course, he also knew that resistance was useless. Shilai Wendy's expression became extremely serious. Under his control, the runes on the ground began to wrap around Ares like a piece of cloth. Every rune wrapped around Ares's body brought him unspeakable pain. His divine power was being stripped away. Ares tried to resist this power. But he was too weak now. His divine power had already been stolen. Then, Chen Zhao beat him up. He had never been so weak before. Even when he was asleep. Expressionlessly, Chen Zhao stood before Ares. Were you the one who instigated the gang riots in Los Angeles recently? Ares looked at Chen Zhao. There was confusion in his eyes, but also a flash of realization. I know where your troubles come from, but as an enemy, I will not tell you the truth. All right, I'll remember what you said. I'll add a biopsy project to your research project. Ares silently closed his eyes. The primitive words were seeping into his body. Soon, Ares's entire body was covered in red runes. Chen Zhao glanced at Ares, who was completely naked. The seal is complete, Shilai Wendy said. It's done. That's it? Wasn't he supposed to be sent somewhere out of sight? For example, a different dimension. I can't do it. My seal can only seal his power, and only for 3 days. Shilai Wendy looked at Chen Zhao helplessly. If he was given sufficient preparation, it was actually possible. But the preparation time was far more than 3 days. Chen Zhao's face twitched. How was this different from not being sealed? Chen Zhao's headache had been not knowing what to do with Ares. Instead of worrying about Ares's power. Whether he was sealed or not, Chen Zhao couldn't bring him to the supernatural organization's headquarters or home. This was the biggest problem. It wasn't power, but Ares himself. Shilai Wendy's seal didn't alleviate this problem. Instead, it made it even more troublesome. Right now, Ares's entire body was covered in red runes. Anyone who saw him would know that he was in trouble. Chen Zhao didn't dare to let Ares leave his sight at all. I don't want this kind of seal. I thought you understood. Shilai Wendy looked at Chen Zhao. Just then, Chen Zhao's phone rang. Chen Zhao, where are you now? Bifla's voice came from the phone. Qin Zhao couldn't help but smile. You're in Los Angeles? Yes, I just got off the plane, Bifla said. Bifla said, I felt a force on the surface of the sea. It seemed to be coming from you. Did you fight with Ares on the sea? I'm on Mystical Island now. Where are you? I'll go find you. I told you, I just got off the plane. Okay, I mean, where should we meet? You're a local. You're asking me where to meet? Forget it. Wait for me at a farm in the suburbs to the west. It's in ruins. You should be able to recognize it easily. Qin Zhao mentioned Ares and Shilai Wendy. Shilai Wendy really wanted to tell Qin Zhao. He didn't like flying, especially being carried. And being carried by Qin Zhao. Resisting the wind pressure from high speed was even more tiring than fighting an evenly matched opponent. But he clearly didn't have a choice. When Qin Zhao returned to Shilai Wendy's farm, Bifla had already arrived first. Bifla glanced at Shilai Wendy and Ares, who Qin Zhao was carrying. Which one of them is the god of war Ares? With your eyesight, can't you tell? Qin Zhao was rather proud. He had recognized Ares' background at first glance. Bifla actually didn't recognize him. Bifla shook his head. Their powers are very strange. He seems to have been sealed by him, but his power isn't at the level I think a god should be. Just then, Ares lifted his head and glanced at Bifla. Human, what level do you think a god should be? How can you set standards for a god? Bifla looked at Ares. Obviously, Ares had admitted his identity on his own. Bifla shrugged. I feel that I have already reached the standard of a god, so I believe that I can be a god. As a standard, I believe that everyone below me is a mortal, and everyone above me is a god. Qin Zhao tossed Ares before Bifla. I'll leave him to you. I don't want to watch him. Before old Zhang and 23rd arrive, you have absolute control over him. Chapter 2848. What rune is this? Which faction is it from? Bifla clearly didn't know the primitive language. Qin Zhao glanced at Shilai Wenger. His masterpiece. He gave it to you too. Is he your trophy too? Old Zhang gave me 2 things last time. I asked him to appraise them, but he wanted them. Hearing Qin Zhao's words, Bifla couldn't help but look at Shilai Wenger playfully. After a long while, he said, your courage is commendable. You even dare to touch something that Celestial Master Zhang gave you. Shilai Wenger's expression was ashen. He was still a distance away from the top. At least, he couldn't do what Qin Zhao and Zhang Tianyi had done and return the divine artifact. Qin Zhao left after giving his instructions. He threw Ares and Shilai Wenger to Bifla. With Bifla present, he didn't need to worry at all. Bifla might not be as strong as Qin Zhao. But his knowledge, his wisdom. Even 100 Qin Zhaos couldn't compare to him. Maybe Ares and Shilai Wenger would do something under Qin Zhao's nose. But they definitely couldn't do that in front of Bifla. As for whether Bifla would be able to come up with something, Qin Zhao knew that Bifla wouldn't hide anything. The reason why the few of them could get together was because they understood each other's temperaments better. Even though they belonged to different forces, they were still the same. But they all pursued higher realms. This wouldn't change. Therefore, sharing knowledge would bring more feedback. The leader among them would also be able to show them the way. Take Qin Zhao for example. He was the leader now. Every step he took was difficult and obscure. Every step was like a blind man groping an elephant. Every step Qin Zhao gave them was a guiding light. On the other hand, if everyone kept their knowledge to themselves, then the strong would get stronger and the weak would get weaker. In the end, they would distance themselves. This was a choice that would benefit both parties if they worked together, but it would be detrimental if they were divided. If everyone had the thought that he might be stronger than them, and it would be troublesome if they became enemies in the future, then they wouldn't be able to work together. All 4 of them had an unspoken rule. They didn't need to tell each other their core secrets. But on the path of cultivation, any enlightenment and feeling had to be shared. In the past 2 days, they had been preparing to move. He moved from Mirror Lake Manor to Mingyue Villa. Of course, there was nothing much to move. He didn't plan to move any furniture. They were mainly transporting summer clothes. As for daily necessities, he could prepare another set. The main thing was to send a few underlings over to clean up the place. When the inferior demons were almost ready, the whole family could move in with their bags. Zhang Tianyi and the 23rd generation arrived the day after Chen Zhao notified them. With the addition of Bifla and the other two, they had already become dead otakus. They hid in the lab Chen Zhao had prepared for them all day. The lab was the underground base of a mysterious organization that Chen Zhao had destroyed before. However, that mysterious organization had vanished without a trace long ago. The underground base had been empty for a year or two. Now, it was time to make use of the waste. That place was well hidden enough, and there were no disturbances. Chen Zhao, on the other hand, spent his days outside. If there were any discoveries, just wait for me to inform you. Moreover, Chen Zhao had things to do. The second episode of Lost Civilization was broadcasted. The secrets on Gongdu Island gradually surfaced. At the same time, all kinds of strange things began to happen. This episode caused quite a commotion when it was broadcasted. The ratings also set a record for SC broadcast television. At its peak, more than 6 million people watched. If it was on a national TV station, this number naturally wouldn't be a record. But SC broadcast television only had coverage in California. The total population was only around 40 million. 6 million viewers meant that 1/7 of California's population had watched the show. Earthquakes, tsunamis, startled birds, ring clouds, giant python, mysterious trident. They all became the center of attention. Especially the mysterious trident. It also caused heated discussions among the public. For most people, the trident was the trident of Poseidon. The show never said that the ancient Greek civilization had appeared on Gongdu Island. The show never said that the ancient Greek civilization had appeared on Gongdu Island. However, from the traces in some ruins, it could be seen that it wasn't an ancient American civilization. After all, the difference in style was too obvious. Then, all kinds of mysterious things happened one after another. Lane Vilast's performance in the show was extremely eye-catching. After editing, she was portrayed as a female warrior who didn't fear danger. She was like Lara in Tomb Raider. He was knowledgeable and had extraordinary skills. Most of the time, she was eloquent. She could deal with danger calmly. When she was in front of the pond with the mysterious trident, she was also the first to rush up. She didn't retreat when she faced the threat of the giant python. It was also when the mysterious trident appeared that the show reached its climax. There was also the appearance of the mysterious black shadow. All of this showed how special the show was. It also made the show the biggest hit of the year. The governor of SC Corporation, Sheckley, called. He said that all 5 broadcasting companies in North America had contacted him. He hoped to get the broadcasting rights of Lost Civilization. The price was easy to negotiate. Also, their prices were all surprisingly high. It had already exceeded the production cost. This meant that Chen Zhao had originally thought that he would lose money. In the end, he didn't lose money. Instead, he made a lot of money. Although this money didn't mean much to Chen Zhao. As for whether he should broadcast it to other TV stations, Chen Zhao didn't care. He let Sheckley be in charge of contacting and discussing the price. Anyway, Chen Zhao had achieved his goal. In a high-rise apartment, 6 people were sitting in front of the television, watching the second episode of Lost Civilization on SC TV station. "Boss, is that trident the thing you're looking for?" Milo Tanzik Williams watched the show expressionlessly. His eyes flashed. No one knew what he was thinking. When the show ended, Milo Tanzik Williams said, "Go check the location of Gongdu Island." Boss, that trident must be Poseidon's weapon, right? That must be what we're looking for. I don't know, but it's definitely not simple, Milo Tanzik Williams said in a low voice. Milo Tanzik Williams said in a deep voice, also, invite Miss Ryan Wylist from this show. Also, the director of this show should have a lot of content that hasn't been aired yet. Okay, I'll go now. Wait. If possible, bring the 3rd episode of Lost Civilization too. Maybe we can find more information from it. Chapter 2849. Lane Vilest got up from the bed in a daze. But all of a sudden, Ryan Vilast saw a black figure sitting by the bed. Ah! Lane Vilest screamed in fear. The black shadow sat there calmly and spoke in a cold voice. If I were you, I wouldn't scream. Lane Vilest quickly calmed down and looked at the black shadow in front of her in shock. Who are you? What do you want? Lane Vilest sneakily reached under the pillow. Lane Vilest had a very bad habit. She liked to hide a gun under the pillow. This stemmed from the fact that she had almost been raped. Since then, she needed a gun to calm her emotions. Lane Vilest suddenly pulled out her gun and fired at the black shadow without hesitation. She had broken the fortress agreement and barged into someone else's house without permission. She deserved to be shot. Lane Vilest wasn't that kind of weak girl either. When she was filming a show in Colombia, they happened to meet a drug dealer and the film crew started a gun battle with the drug dealer. Lane Vilest had killed 2 people with her own hands. She was also a member of the Shooting Hobby Association. Every year, she would shoot more than 1,000 times. Bang! Just then, sparks splashed on the black shadow's face. Then the bullets bounced around the room. I don't like this. The black shadow stood up, sounding very dissatisfied. Lane Vilest was so scared that she trembled slightly. But she quickly came back to her senses. She flipped over on the bed, rolled to the side, and fired a few more shots at the black shadow. But no matter where the bullets hit, they only created sparks. Lane Vilest felt it too. No matter who the other party was, she and the gun in her hand definitely couldn't kill the other party. The black shadow grinned. Although the room was pitch black at the moment. But the white teeth were especially eye-catching. It seemed that even the night couldn't hide the white teeth. Then, Lane Vilest suddenly felt her body being bound. She had nothing on her, but she couldn't open her arms. An invisible force pulled her down. The fear of the unknown also made Lane Vilest's mind go blank. What was going on? Who was this person? Why did he attack me? Ryan Wylist was dragged out of the house and into a black MPV. After getting into the car, Ryan Wylist suddenly realized that Falui Lysander was also in the car. But in the next moment, she discovered that Falui Lysander had been captured just like her. Falui, this isn't your doing, is it? What kind of parody show is this? Ryan Velast was still hoping for a fluke. Falui Lysander glanced at Ryan Velast silently. He didn't say anything, and he didn't want to say anything. When he returned home, he found a stranger in his house. Then, thinking that he was skilled, he wanted to exchange a few moves with his opponent. In the end, he was pressed against the ground and rubbed against again and again. The last person to be dragged into the car still had injuries on his face. He really did not want to explain anything to Ryan Velast. He even felt a little lucky when he saw Ryan Wylist. He was not the only one who was unlucky. Then the man who had dragged Ryan Wylist out got into the car and sat next to them in the back seat. Ryan Velast saw it clearly as well. He was a Negro, not very tall, thin and small. He looked a little malnourished. Falui Lysander glanced at the black man. Ryan, you can't beat him? Ryan Velast almost laughed out of anger at Falui Lysander's words. He snorted coldly. Fight him if you dare. If you win, I'll be your mistress for 3 months. Falui Lysander glanced at the black man. He was a little eager. But the person sitting in the front seat had just made him physically and mentally exhausted not long ago. They didn't know where the two of them would be taken to. It couldn't be a good place. When they reached their destination, they were a little surprised. Originally, he thought that it would be some remote wilderness. They didn't expect it to be a high-end apartment building. They had thought about finding a chance to ask the security and butler for help. But when they entered the apartment building's lobby, they found that everyone in the lobby was wearing black suits. And everyone had sharp eyes and gun holsters at their waists. The people who caught the two of them swaggered in and didn't even bother to conceal themselves. Ryan Vilest and Phaler Lysander looked left and right. They hoped to distinguish the origin of these people from certain characteristics. But after glancing at a few people, they couldn't recognize them. Ding! The two of them were pushed into the elevator. But they suddenly realized that they weren't the only ones in the elevator. There was also an unbelievably tall giant standing in the elevator. The giant was at least 2.5 meters tall and his limbs were ridiculously thick. Phaler Lysander looked at the giant in disbelief. Even though this elevator was wider and taller than normal elevators. But the giant still had to lower his head. Otherwise, his head would hit the ceiling. Ryan Vilest furrowed his brows. Earlier, she had felt that these people might not be ordinary people. Now she was even more certain. She had never heard of humans who could look like this. Ding! The elevator reached the top floor. The giant pushed the two of them with one hand. When the two of them got out of the elevator, the giant followed them out. In front of them was a luxuriously decorated living room. In the middle of the living room, there was a main seat and 8 secondary seats. And in the entire living room, only the man sitting in the main seat was normal. The other 8 secondary seats were either empty or filled with people who didn't look normal. Sitting on the lowest seat was a person who was dripping wet. However, this person had a strange fish head. Opposite him was a woman with blue skin. Phaler Lysander suspected that he had really been pranked. This might be a prank. It looked like a costume party. Ryan Vilest's expression was solemn. This definitely wasn't a costume party. He might have entered a place where supernaturals gathered. Just then, the fish head spoke first. Phaler Lysander, where is the island where you filmed Lost Civilization? Who are you? I don't like this kind of prank. If you don't stop, I'll sue you for illegal detention. I don't care who you are. Just then, Milo Tanzik Williams, who was sitting in the middle, stood up. Can the laws of humans control the gods? Chapter 2850. Phaler Lysander looked at Milo Tanzik Williams, dumbfounded. It was the first time he faced such a situation and question. God? He never thought that one day someone would run up to him and ask him such a question. This man claimed to be a god. Was this the territory of some evil cult? Were these brainless cultists planning to make him a member? Phaler Lysander's mind kept filling in the blanks. Phaler Lysander clearly did not believe Milo Tanzik Williams's words. But at this moment, Phaler Lysander's body floated uncontrollably. Milo Tanzik Williams gently raised his arm. Don't use your ignorance to question me. Phaler Lysander immediately panicked. He did not understand, nor did he understand. Why was his body floating? In the next instant, an invisible pressure made his body tense up. Then came the pain. The bones in his body were crying out in pain. Then came the difficulty of breathing. He felt as if he was in a vacuum zone, unable to take in any air through his mouth or nose. In just a few seconds, he felt as if he had experienced a few centuries. Finally, all the restraints were gone. Phaler Lysander fell to the ground, gasping for air. Shock and disbelief were written all over his face. He did not understand, nor could he understand what had happened. But he knew one thing. This must be a supernatural power. Lane Vilest did not make a sound. She was also frightened. She had been wondering if the man in front of her was really as he said. A god. Very soon, Falui Lysander and Ryan Velast entered a state where they would not hide anything from each other. It did not matter if the other was a real god or not. They did not have any choice in the face of Milo Tanzik Williams. It didn't matter if it was because of the other party's identity or his martial prowess. They could only cooperate obediently. A day later, Falui Lysander and Lane Velast boarded the ship to Gongdu Island. Both of them were deeply worried, and the people around them didn't seem to be human beings. Of course, most of them maintained their human form. But a few were not in human form. Just looking at them was enough to make one's hair stand on end, and so was their food. "Hey, beauty, do you have time for a drink?" Ryan Wylast was enjoying the sea breeze at the bow when a man walked over. Ryan Velast looked at the man. He was handsome and stylish. He was tall, handsome, well-dressed, and very elegant. If he didn't have a long, thin tail, he would be a perfect male. Of course, compared to the other people on the ship, Ryan Velast was more willing to communicate with this man. "Don't be afraid, I don't eat people," the man said with a smile. His smile had the power to dissolve the fear in the heart. Ryan Velast relaxed a little. She didn't know why, but this man just made her feel at ease. "My name is Bader," said the man. "So you are a god too?" "Hee hee. There's only one god, and that's my boss, Mr. Moreau." Bader laughed. "What about you guys? Believer? Servant? Or are they his creations? I was originally an ordinary person. He gave me power, and I obeyed him. So, is he really a god? In the eyes of ordinary people like you, existences that are stronger than you, existences that you can't understand, can be called gods. Since ancient times, the definition of a god has always been vague. For example, the supreme god of JD School is the only god. His definition is omnipotent, incomprehensible, and infinitely merciful. So, whether my boss is a god or not depends on which religion you use to define the concept of a god. What if it's the JD School standard? If that's the standard, then he's just a slightly stronger human. You don't seem to have much respect for your boss. Ryan Velast keenly noticed that Bader's tone was light, without the slightest respect for his boss. Bader laughed softly and didn't answer Ryan Velast's question. However, the look in his eyes already answered the question. "I thought he should be loyal to your team and serve your master wholeheartedly." "Hee hee." Bader laughed. Ryan Velast was still a little wary of Balder, but Balder wasn't a match for him. But at least Bader didn't show any malice, nor was he dangerous. The two chatted a lot, and Ryan Velast also got a lot of information from Bader. Of course, maybe she didn't get the information, but Bader deliberately leaked it to her. Anyway, Ryan Velast could feel that Bader's attitude was very ambiguous. He didn't show much respect to his master. Ryan Velast also suspected that it might be Bader's facade. Maybe it was just a facade he deliberately showed to make him misunderstand. But what was the purpose of misleading him? Could it produce any benefits? At least, Ryan Velast couldn't think of any benefits he could bring to Bader. After a day and a night, Milo Tanzik Williams and his men arrived at Gongdu Island. Milo Tanzik Williams looked into the distance, his divine power sweeping across the entire island. As expected, he felt an unusual aura on the island. It was very subtle, but it couldn't hide from him. "Over there." Milo Tanzik Williams pointed to the south side of the island. There was a familiar yet strange aura there. Bader stood at the back of the team. There was some doubt in his eyes. Bader looked at Milo Tanzik Williams. At this moment, Ryan Velast happened to look at him. After everyone landed, the team made some adjustments and continued forward. "Boss, I feel a huge aura ahead." "It's huge." Attila, the little giant in the team, said. Milo Tanzik Williams also felt it, and he sensed it more than the others. He also sensed it more comprehensively. The owner of this aura was powerful, but it was unfamiliar. Not long after, Falui Lysander and Ryan Velast found themselves in front of the pool. However, the stone platform was no longer in the pool. The surrounding plants were still knocked down into a circle. Milo Tanzik Williams stopped in his tracks. The powerful aura was here, but there was nothing here. At this moment, a majestic voice sounded. The voice was very loud, but it was hard to tell where it came from. This is not a place you can set foot in. Leave. Otherwise, you will be punished. Chapter 28:51. The roar made everyone's hair stand on end. The sound was clearly nearby, but they couldn't see anyone. It was the same for Milo Tanzik Williams. The aura clearly felt very close to him. But he couldn't see anyone. So he couldn't help but wonder if the other party's concealment skills were especially high. Based on his concealment skills, the other party's strength might not be weak either. Milo Tanzik Williams stood where he was, maintaining his composure on the surface. In fact, he was panicking inside. Milo Tanzik Williams was ambitious, premeditated, and powerful. But he didn't have enough experience. Milo Tanzik Williams was originally a normal person. A gang that couldn't be any more normal. He had come into contact with the supernatural world for less than 2 years. In the past 3 years, he had fought less than 10 times. Most of the time, his subordinates could solve the problem. So, no matter how sacred and inviolable he seemed on the surface. In fact, he was still a mortal with extraordinary power. Although he had been studying this power for the past 2 years. But in terms of mentality, he hadn't really transformed. It was like a beggar who had obtained a huge fortune. But he didn't know how to use it. Maybe he could use simple things like eating, drinking, and playing. But he didn't know how to use this money to invest and gain greater returns. Of course, he couldn't say that he didn't know anything. At the very least, Milo Tanzik Williams was currently working hard to obtain greater power. His power came from Ares, the god of war. He had stolen Ares's divine power. He had power close to that of a god. This power was indeed extremely powerful. It was so powerful that he had a strange idea. That was to make himself a god. He had divine power, but he didn't have authority. So, while Milo Tanzik Williams was studying divine power, he was also studying how to obtain divine authority. Fortunately, he found a helper. An expert in the Olympian mythological system, Bader. After Milo Tanzik Williams showed his power, they hit it off. Bader also received a gift from Milo Tanzik Williams. Milo Tanzik Williams said that after he became a true god, he would think of a way to make Bader and his trusted followers become lower gods. Bader, on the other hand, expressed that he was willing to kneel down. With this method, Milo Tanzik Williams managed to win over a large group of like-minded subordinates. But in terms of actual combat experience, he might not even be as good as his subordinates. Therefore, when faced with some incomprehensible things, he was still panicking. Bang! After that, the stone mountain next to the pool shook. Gravel fell from the rocky mountain. It set off wave after wave of waves. Then, the silhouette of a huge creature gradually appeared in front of the Chinese. Everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. As the stone mountain collapsed, the huge creature stood up from the bottom of the mountain. Dragon. It was a real dragon. The legendary giant dragon. That imposing figure, that powerful and suffocating aura, caused everyone to stagnate. Even Milo Tanzik Williams couldn't help but take 2 steps back. He had never thought that he would face a giant dragon. He had never met a dragon before. This was the first time in his life. Mortals, you have set foot on an inviolable holy land. The giant dragon looked down at the crowd. Both Falui Lysander and Ryan Velast were scared silly. They were different from the others. The 2 of them were truly ordinary people. God, dragon, it had nothing to do with them. But they didn't just have to face God now. They also had to face the giant dragon. The 2 of them hid behind the rock. They were afraid that the giant dragon would see them. Ryan Velast's thought was that it was a pity that there were no cameras. If only they could record the scene in front of them. It might cause an even more shocking effect than Lost Civilization. At that moment, Ryan Wylast noticed that Balder was slowly retreating. His expression was different from the others. He was looking at the situation in front of him with surprise, confusion, and a meaningful smile. Ryan Velast looked at Milo Tanzik Williams. Milo Tanzik Williams also had a horrified expression. It made it seem like Bader should be the boss of the team. At least Bader was calmer than the others, even Milo Tanzik Williams. "It's me. Milo Tanzik Williams, the descendant of Ares, the god of war, and the heir of the god of war." Milo Tanzik Williams said loudly, "I'm here to look for the divine artifact of the Olympian gods that has been lost here. Now, I order you to step back, in the name of the god of war." The descendant of the god of war? The giant dragon still raised its proud head and looked down at Milo Tanzik Williams. "I don't see how you look like a god of war." Milo Tanzik Williams raised his right arm and clenched his fist. A white light containing divine power bloomed from his fist. It was like the flash of a star. This power also gave Milo Tanzik Williams confidence and courage. With this divine power, what did he have to be afraid of? So what if he was facing a legendary giant dragon? Even if it was a giant dragon, it was only a mount or a pet of a god. "I guess you are also a member of the Olympian race. I allow you to be my mount," Milo Tanzik Williams said confidently. Boom! The giant dragon suddenly slammed its claws on the ground. In an instant, a huge pit appeared in the ground, and cracks spread across the entire area. "Mortal, you have a death wish. You don't know how to appreciate favors." Milo Tanzik Williams's raised arm suddenly opened and pressed down. In an instant, pillars of light fell from the sky. Warriors in golden armor walked out of the pillars of light. "Giant dragon, I'll give you one last chance. Submit to me. In the name of the god of war, I will grant you glory." Milo Tanzik Williams still could not bear to kill the giant dragon in front of him. He was only one step away from becoming a god. When he became a god, he would naturally need servants and mounts. He already had servants, but he did not have mounts. Especially a cool mount like the giant dragon in front of him. If he rode this thing out, people would definitely turn their heads. As for whether he could subdue this dragon, after spreading his divine power throughout his body, Milo Tanzik Williams' senses became clearer. The giant dragon in front of him was indeed powerful, but it was not enough to shake him. Chapter 2852. It could be said that divine power gave him more than just confidence. It also gave him unimaginable knowledge. This kind of knowledge did not belong to Milo Tanzik Williams. Instead, it came from Ares, from the power he had stolen. Ever since Milo Tanzik Williams stole Ares's divine power had been stolen. He had also been conducting research on divine power. He had also developed many moves to use divine power. But no matter how much he studied, it was not as good as this moment of enlightenment. In any case, Milo Tanzik Williams felt that he had wasted more than 2 years of his life. He also felt that he had been so stupid in the past. Of course, he was suddenly receiving enlightenment from divine power. It was mainly because of the stimulation of the giant dragon in front of him. If not for the giant dragon in front of him, he was probably still immersed in the pleasure brought by divine power and could not extricate himself. He thought that the divine power he had mastered was all he had. Until now, when he received the infusion of divine power knowledge. Only now did he truly understand that this was how divine power was used. Although he had received enlightenment, he was still very young. But compared to him a moment ago, he was many times more brilliant. Ares's knowledge also allowed him to recognize the strength of the giant dragon in front of him. It was very powerful, but there was still a world of difference between him and himself. Then, he summoned the 12 sacred armors. His battle with the giant dragon began. Milo Tanzik Williams crossed his arms and watched the battle with a relaxed expression. At this moment, he was no longer as panicked and surprised as before. It was as if everything was under his control. The dragon slapped away a sacred armor divine weapon with a single slap. The sacred armor was almost deformed by the slap. But under the influence of divine power, all the damage was restored in an instant. Clang, a crisp sound rang out as the sacred armor divine weapon slashed at the dragon's neck. The giant dragon tilted its head slightly. A few dragon scales on its neck were cut off, and a little blood seeped out. Under the pain, the giant dragon immediately revealed a furious expression. The giant dragon opened its mouth with all its might and bit the sacred armor a few times. In the end, it bit it into scrap metal and spat it out. This time, the sacred armor did not recover. It seemed that the sacred armor was not completely indestructible. Roar, the giant dragon roared, arrogant fool, it will be your turn soon. Milo Tanzik Williams did not think much of it as he said lightly. Do you think that by destroying a holy armor divine weapon, you have already defeated me? You don't understand how powerful the gods are. Milo Tanzik Williams raised his right arm again and waved it gently. More beams of light descended from the sky. One by one, the sacred armors walked out from the light beams. Each of the divine armors was filled with holy radiance. At the same time, it exuded an irresistible aura. It was an oppressive feeling brought about by the divine power they possessed, and it had an absolute suppressive effect on lower-level existences. The draconic aura of the giant dragon had no effect on them. Instead, it was the divine aura they exuded that made the giant dragon very uncomfortable. He didn't like this kind of fight. It seemed that the outcome of the battle had yet to be determined. But the situation was very disadvantageous to him. The individual strength of these sacred armors was actually not very strong. The dragon could deal with a dozen of them. If he had enough time, he could send all the sacred armors to the garbage collection bin. But if there were more of them, he wouldn't be able to deal with them. He wasn't an elephant, and these sacred armors weren't ants. An astronomical number was not needed to defeat or even kill the giant dragon. When Milo Tanzik Williams summoned the second wave of sacred armors, the number was already enough. Every time the sacred armors attacked, they could slightly injure the giant dragon. Although they weren't very heavy, the fact that they could break through his defense meant that the giant dragon was already at a disadvantage in this battle. Each of the sacred armors and divine weapons could give him a slight injury. When added together, it would become a serious injury. The more the giant dragon fought, the angrier he became. Enough. The giant dragon slammed his forelimbs on the ground. In an instant, stone pillars exploded from the ground. These stone pillars instantly sealed the sacred armors. The sacred armors were still in the same position for a moment. Human, your toys are useless. Now it's your turn. The others' expressions were somewhat solemn. Bader, on the other hand, looked surprised. At the same time, Bader turned to look at Ryan Velast. He had already noticed that Ryan Velast had been secretly observing him. No, Ryan Velast didn't avoid his gaze at all. Bader smiled at Ryan Velast. It was as if he was saying, I know you're observing me. Milo Tanzik Williams looked at the giant dragon with a smile. Your strength surprised me a little. Well, that's about it. Milo Tanzik Williams stretched out 2 fingers, his tone filled with disdain for the giant dragon. However, this degree of surprise doesn't seem to be enough for you to defeat me. Milo Tanzik Williams pointed at the giant dragon. The giant dragon felt an unfamiliar power sweep through his body. But the feeling was fleeting. It was over before he could resist or resist at all. But this power didn't seem to be attacking him. At least he didn't feel hurt. Milo Tanzik Williams lowered his arm, the smile on his face even wider. What did you do? Nothing. I just used God's authority. Playing tricks, the giant dragon snorted coldly. The giant dragon slammed his claws on the ground again. A huge stone pillar rushed out of the ground in front of him and shot towards Milo Tanzik Williams. Just then, Milo Tanzik Williams stepped on the ground with his foot. Similarly, a huge stone pillar rushed out of the ground in front of Milo Tanzik Williams. The two stone pillars collided. They were evenly matched. But the giant dragon was no longer calm. How? How is this possible? This is God's authority. Do you see it? What you know, so do I. And I'm stronger than you. Miro Tanzik Williams stepped onto the ground again, only to see a huge stone palm appear beside the dragon and grab it. Now, tell me, are you willing to submit to me? The giant dragon felt uncomfortable being grabbed by the stone palm, but he grinned. Do you think you've won? Let me see what other tricks you have to turn the tables. There doesn't seem to be any. I know all your abilities, but none of them can get you out of this situation. The giant dragon stretched out his claws with difficulty and lifted a dragon scale on his lower jaw. Milo Tanzik Williams didn't understand the giant dragon's intentions. He didn't stop the giant dragon. He wanted to see what other tricks the giant dragon could play. Do you see this contract imprint? Chapter 28:53. Baldur's eyes were filled with bewilderment. A slave contract. This was not a beautiful magical contract. Be it humans or dragons, they didn't like being enslaved. This was especially true for powerful dragons. It was difficult to accept such a slave contract without being beaten. Moreover, the contract imprint exuded an abundant aura. This meant that the person who imposed the contract on him was still alive. Moreover, he was living very stably. This also meant that the owner of this contract was not only powerful. Moreover, he was young and vigorous, not the kind of old god that had lost his teeth. Baldur searched his mind for candidates who met these conditions. However, he did not find anyone who met these conditions. It was very likely that the person who could beat a dragon and force it to sign a slave contract was a god. As far as he knew, none of the people he knew would do this. They usually acted like cowards and kept a low profile. It was unlikely that they would force a dragon to be their slave and servant. After all, an ordinary adult dragon was not a necessity for a god. Making them do housework? Apart from being able to make some achievements in demolishing houses, their other housework skills were just passable. Moreover, they were active by nature, which would always be accompanied by trouble. They were the opposite of keeping a low profile. As for transportation and the like, with their huge bodies, they were perfect targets for surface-to-air missiles. As for their battle prowess, to those who could enslave them, their battle prowess was not necessary. Those people might even prefer to enslave weak servant spirits instead of giant dragons. As for Milo Tanzik Williams and his pitiful subordinates, there was nothing they could do. They were basically in a state of confusion. There was no relevant content in Ares's knowledge. And the power he borrowed from the dragon also did not have relevant information. So he did not understand the purpose of the dragon showing this contract imprint at all. Could it be that this contract imprint represented some force? Do you want to use this imprint to scare away a god? Are you mistaken? Milo Tanzik Williams looked at the dragon disapprovingly. Boss, maybe we really should leave, Baldur said. Why? Just because of that imprint? That imprint represents trouble, big trouble, Baldur replied. At this time, the dragon said, I never thought of defeating you. What do you mean? Don't you think you're a god? Unfortunately, I think my master is also a deity, so a fight between the two of you should be very exciting. You have a master? Milo Tanzik Williams was very dissatisfied with this. A dragon could only have one master. That was him. Only he was qualified to do so. The giant dragon grinned. You'd better be careful. My master is very powerful. Don't try to fool me with this reason. No matter who your master is, I'll let him know that I'm not to be trifled with. Milo Tanzik Williams was still as arrogant as ever. Not only did divine power give him confidence, it also gave him arrogance. He seemed to think that just because he was stupid, he should look down on all living beings from above. At this moment, Bader turned to look at Ryan Velast. We better get out of here. Ryan Velast was startled when he suddenly heard the voice in his head. Finally, she focused her gaze on Bader. He asked with his eyes, Are you talking? We'd better hurry up. Why? Ryan Velast responded with his eyes. That dragon's master isn't someone that a dabbler like Milo can deal with. Ryan Velast still didn't understand. Wasn't the power that Milo Tanzik Williams displayed powerful enough? He still had overwhelming power when facing the giant dragon. The giant dragon was as powerless as a child before him. Ryan Velast felt that this was terrifying enough. But from what Bader said, it didn't seem to be enough. Such great power wasn't enough? Bader smiled bitterly. It was really troublesome to explain to ordinary people. The level that Milo Tanzik Williams had displayed was nowhere near that level. Bader carefully moved backward. Fortunately, everyone's attention was on the giant dragon at this moment. No one noticed Bader's actions. The giant dragon, or rather, Sabonis, was also very anxious. He had already stalled for so long, a full 10 minutes. Why wasn't his boss here yet? With his speed, he should have arrived long ago. The scene fell into silence. Milo Tanzik Williams didn't act immediately. He wanted to wait for Sabonis' master to arrive. Then, he would defeat him with his own hands. To prove his strength. But the other party didn't seem to be here yet. Is your master afraid? Milo Tanzik Williams said disdainfully. That. Sabonis was a little embarrassed. Can I make a call? Obviously, this sentence was very inappropriate in this situation. However, what was even more unexpected was that Milo Tanzik Williams actually agreed to it. Hee. Of course, it's good to let you give up. Then. Sabonis took out a very old-fashioned phone, a brick brand. Before he transformed into a human, he could only use this kind of durable phone. But even so, making the call was still a difficult task for him. Without destroying the phone, successfully making the call was far more difficult than a fierce battle. Fortunately, he was fully focused and still completed the task of making the call. Hello, Sabonis? Boss, didn't you receive the message I sent you? The fish took the bait. The fish took the bait. The person you asked me to wait for is here. Why aren't you here yet? If you don't come, I'll be killed by him. Oh. I see. I'm playing games with my daughter. I'll go when she falls asleep. Hold on a little longer. I can't. He's too strong. No, Chen Zhao said nonchalantly. You lasted 3 minutes and didn't get killed. You can do it. I believe in you. Sabonis wailed. Just then, Milo Tanzik Williams walked up and picked up the phone from the ground. Coward, if you don't dare to come, your pet is mine. Coward? Kid, do you know what you're saying? On the other end of the phone, Chen Zhao laughed disdainfully. With the power you stole from Ares? Chapter 28:54. What do you know? Milo's face was covered in a layer of frost. Ha! How much do you think I know? Chen Zhao chuckled. Do you dare to show yourself and fight me? Milo Tanzik Williams was still full of confidence in his combat ability. As long as he killed the person who knew about it, no one would know about it. Sure. Milo Tanzik Williams heard an unfamiliar voice behind him. He couldn't help but turn around and see a strange Asian standing behind the crowd. Ryan Velast and Faroe Lysander also looked at the newcomer. However, when they saw who it was, their faces were filled with astonishment. How could it be him? Why was it him? The two couldn't help but look at each other and see the shock in each other's eyes. Bader looked at Chen Zhao. When did this man appear behind him? Chen Zhao's gaze swept across everyone present. What a surprise. My luck seems to be pretty good recently. I actually met another god. Meeting a god doesn't mean you're lucky. Milo sneered at Chen Zhao. Ha! Chen Zhao chuckled. You think I'm talking about you? Chen Zhao turned his head and looked at Bader. You, which myth are you from? You're not an Olympian god. Your aura is different from theirs, but you're still similar to them. Bader looked at Chen Zhao. Have you seen a real god? Yes, I've killed a demigod and seen the corpse of a god. I even defeated a god recently. After a moment of silence, Bader said, I don't have any grudges with you, so you don't mind if I leave, right? I've been studying gods and how to become one, so I don't mind having another research subject. Chen Zhao looked at Bader, his eyes shining. You still need to become a god? Bader said seriously. Your power is already greater than most gods. Becoming a god is to obtain greater power. The path I'm taking is very different from that of gods, so I want to see if I can use the divine right to obtain greater power. If you just want to know the relevant information, I can provide it to you, but I don't plan on being your test subject. Are you blind? You actually think he's a god? There is only one god here, and that is me. He's just one of my dogs. Chen Zhao looked at Milo Tanzik Williams and then at Bader. I seem to have ruined your plan. What do you want to do by lurking around him? What does he have that you covet? Smiling, Bader looked at Chen Zhao. Actually, I'm not trying to get anything from him. I just want to see if he can really succeed. Succeed in what? Godhood. Bader, what are you talking about? Have you forgotten that I was the one who found you? Milo Tanzik Williams said with a frown. Bader glanced at Milo Tanzik Williams nonchalantly. Are you sure it was you who found me? Milo Tanzik Williams frowned and recalled how he had met Bader. He wasn't sure if he had found Bader himself. Or had someone purposely led him to find Bader in the end? Don't give me that suspicious look. You're right. Everything was just my plan, including your stealing of the divine power of Ares, the god of war. I arranged it. Otherwise, why would you think that you could steal the power of a god so easily? Bader said with a smile. There's only one possibility, and that is the help of another god. Milo Tanzik Williams was a little tense. He had thought that he had done it flawlessly. No one knew what he had done. But now, he felt like the whole world knew what he had done. On the other hand, he had been kept in the dark all along. Nonsense. You lied to me. I'm going to kill all of you. Golden light suddenly bloomed from Milo Tanzik Williams's body. Then, beams of light descended from the sky. Dozens, hundreds of holy armors walked out of the light beams. Scrap metal, Chen Zhao said calmly. In an instant, all the holy armors were squeezed and deformed by an invisible force. In the blink of an eye, they were squeezed into iron balls. In the end, they were kneaded into a ball by brute force. Clang, the iron ball was thrown in front of Milo Tanzik Williams. Milo Tanzik Williams's face turned green and red. Milo Tanzik Williams shouted. In an instant, his divine power swept across Chen Zhao's body. Then, a proud smile appeared on Milo Tanzik Williams's face again. Now, I know everything you know. What a wonderful power. Milo Tanzik Williams felt the power flowing through his body. It was too wonderful. The power of this man before him had reached such an unbelievable level. Chen Zhao had indeed felt the divine power sweep through his body. But he didn't seem to be hurt. What was he doing? Boss, he seems to be able to copy other people's powers. Oh, in other words, he copied me? I think so. Be careful, boss. Chen Zhao chuckled. When he looked at Milo Tanzik Williams, there was a hint of longing in his eyes. Come on, attack me with the power you stole from me. Let's see how well you use it. Milo Tanzik Williams looked at Chen Zhao. His eyes were filled with fury as he roared, Die. A huge palm descended from the sky, as if it was going to slap the entire island into the Pacific Ocean. This is your skill, and I can increase its power by 10 times. Die at the hands of your own pride. Even Milo Tanzek Williams found it unbelievable. This power even surpassed the divine power he had stolen from Ares. Chen Zhao looked at the huge palm formed by the power of the world. Chen Zhao rarely used this move, because it was just for show. It looked good, but it was useless. In a battle of the same level, the damage of this move was close to zero. It would be the same even if the power was increased by 10 times. Only when he attached the power of the world to his physical attack could he increase its power. Therefore, the power of the world was only suitable for buffs, not direct attacks. It was just like how the real function of gasoline was to start a machine, not to pour it on others. Just as Milo Tanzek Williams was feeling proud, he suddenly felt uncomfortable. Then, a strong feeling of weakness surged through his body. This caused him to kneel on the ground and gasp for breath. I just fought with Ares 2 days ago, Chen Zhao said softly. He didn't use this move even when I knocked him down. Do you know why? Milo Tanzek Williams raised his head unwillingly and looked at Chen Zhao. There was unwillingness and doubt in his eyes. Chapter 28:55. Your copy and paste ability is indeed good, Chen Zhao said with a shrug. But under normal circumstances, it's not that valuable. Why? Milo Tanzek Williams could not understand the reason behind it. Stupid, Bader said mockingly. Mr. Milo, copying other people's abilities doesn't mean you don't need to consume energy. You use the God of War authority to copy other people's abilities, but you still need to consume a huge amount of divine power. You'll never be more skilled than the user. I can instantly release 10 times more power than the user, Milo Tanzek Williams interrupted. That's not an advantage at all. This can't even be considered an advantage. The user always understands the power and consumption of their skills. They know what level of skill is most suitable for them. On the other hand, a thief like you actually thinks you can increase the power of your skills by 10 times? This is simply putting the cart before the horse. In a battle of the same level, you need to have your own skills. You need to use the skills you are most familiar with, not the opponent's. Your actions will only put you in a passive position. Bader's analysis was on point, just like how Ares knew this too. That was why he had never tried to copy Chen Zhao's skills. Moreover, although Milo Tanzek Williams had replicated his abilities, he was still able to do so. But he did not copy his bloodline and constitution. Could bloodline and constitution be copied? His skills were a set with bloodline and constitution. His skills were developed based on bloodline and constitution. Without a matching constitution and bloodline, how could he unleash the full power of his skills? Moreover, Milo Tanzek Williams could copy other people's abilities. But he could not directly understand what skills were useful and what weren't. For example, just now, if he had used Chen Zhao's primordial regression technique level 4, he might have been able to exchange a few blows with Chen Zhao. But he had actually chosen the completely useless force of nature. It was like throwing money at someone's face. It was indeed satisfying to watch. But no one could count on RMB to kill someone. And he had used 10 times the amount. In the end, before the huge palm formed by the force of nature slammed down, Milo Tanzek Williams could not take it anymore. He spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. Chen Zhao still felt that this guy was here to be funny. The only one who could compete with him was Haber Timur Haber. He also had great power but did not know how to use it. Of course, relatively speaking, Haber Timur Haber was much better. Haber Timur Haber was just unskilled. On the other hand, Haber Timur Haber was a complete newbie. He really didn't understand anything at all. He just relied on his fists to smash people casually. In the end, he met someone with a bigger fist than him, and he was directly crippled. It was like Chen Zhao risking his life in the stock market with all his money. She could make Chen Zhao jump into the Pacific Ocean naked in minutes. Protect the boss. Milo Tanzek Williams still had a few loyal subordinates. Seeing that Milo Williams was lying on the ground, he immediately stood in front of Chen Zhao. Pa pa pa, Chen Zhao glared at them and they all exploded. Who else wants to exchange a few moves with me? Come out at once. I'll send you back to your hometown. The scene was silent. Both Falui Lysander and Ryan Velast were dumbfounded. They had thought that Milo Tanzik Williams was terrifying enough. Only now did they realize that the truly terrifying guy had been lurking around them all along. As for Milo Tanzik Williams' remaining subordinates, they really did not have the courage to fight Chen Zhao head-on, not even from the side. In fact, apart from a few, they were the core members of the English gang. Most of them had joined later on. Thus, they were not really loyal to Milo Tanzik Williams. Most of them worked together based on benefits. That was why they were willing to give up their lives to fight Chen Zhao. Forget it. This guy doesn't look like a good person. He's not like those superheroes in movies who don't kill. Chen Zhao clapped his hands and turned to look at Bader. Okay, the clowns are dealt with. Now it's our turn. I really want to see how powerful a god at his peak is. Bader looked at Chen Zhao helplessly. He did not want to fight. He really did not want to. This guy was even more dangerous than Ares. He was an existence that specialized in killing. Bader had used his divine power to check Chen Zhao. In the end, he saw a hair-raising scene. Although he could not see everything, it was enough to make him go crazy. If he had the authority of war or battle, he might be able to exchange a few blows with Chen Zhao. But his authority had nothing to do with war. He had a high status in the divine realm and was not weak either. But his power depended on who he was fighting against. Sir, I think you should stop wasting your energy. I'm almost immortal. You can't kill me and I can't beat you, so our battle is destined to be fruitless. I've never believed in immortality. As a god, you should also understand that there is no true immortality in this world. Even gods can die. Of course, I completely agree with your point of view. That's why I'm only saying that I'm almost immortal. Even if you throw me into the sun and roast me, you can't kill me. My immortality is related to my background. I still want to try. This place is only a few hundred kilometers inland. If we fight here, it'll have a huge impact. I'll be in trouble, and so will you. Chen Zhao suddenly missed Ares' divine kingdom. With a single thought, he could transport people into the divine kingdom. No matter how they fought in the divine kingdom, it would not affect the real world. Bader raised an eyebrow. He could feel Chen Zhao's aura growing stronger. The speed made his scalp go numb. Chen Zhao did not release his aura on purpose. But the others already found it difficult to breathe. Chen Zhao had already activated the 4th tier of the primordial regression technique. He stared at Bader with burning eyes. I still want to try. Bader shrugged helplessly. Fine, attack me with all your strength. If you can't kill me, our battle will end here. How about that? Okay, I'll do my best. Chen Zhao silently accumulated his power. The surrounding air currents also started gathering rapidly toward Chen Zhao's fist. Chen Zhao planned to blast Bader into pieces with one blow. Chen Zhao wanted to see if Bader could really not die. If Bader could really take a full power attack and not die, Chen Zhao would have nothing to say. Chapter 2856. Chen Zhao's right fist had turned pitch black. This was because Chen Zhao's right fist had attracted air to it. When any color was darkened to the extreme, it would turn black. Chen Zhao suddenly took a step forward and punched at Bader. Boom! In an instant, with Balder as the starting point. Behind Balder, half of the island had disappeared. The terrifying shockwave lifted the seawater dozens of meters high and kept pushing forward. They had been in the center of Gondo Island. But the next moment, there was only a cliff before them. There was also a huge swamp. The seawater had been scattered by the attack, leaving only a muddy basin. A few minutes later, the seawater finally flowed back into the swamp. The place was silent. Milo Tanzik Williams' eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He suddenly realized how stupid and ignorant he had been. Falui Lysander and Ryan Velast couldn't calm down for a long time. One attack to turn half the island into ashes? This was true annihilation in the truest sense. Was this something a human could do? Falui Lysander started to understand. Why had Chen Zhao's attitude been so strange? He even thought about why Chen Zhao had invested in the Lost Civilization. And when the first episode of the Lost Civilization had aired, why had Chen Zhao been so angry? Chen Zhao was the one behind all of this. As for Milo Tanzik Williams's subordinates, they had almost exploded on the spot. Fuck. They had almost fought such a dangerous person head-on. Right now, they were only at the level of smashing rocks on their chests. If they had to fight a demon king who could vaporize half the island with one punch, they might as well find a corner to bury themselves. Sabonis was speechless. He really doubted how he had withstood Chen Zhao's 5-minute beating back then. As for Balder, he had completely vanished from the world. Chen Zhao was very sure that Balder's aura had completely disappeared. Chen Zhao was somewhat disappointed and even regretful. He was a real god after all. In the end, he had been too careless. Balder's aura and power weren't below Ares at all. Chen Zhao had thought that Balder would at least resist. He didn't think that he wouldn't resist at all. What did it feel like to be hit by a force of tens of billions of tons? Basically, it was a disintegration of molecular structure. Chen Zhao didn't believe that Balder could be revived. And then, Chen Zhao believed it. Countless specks of light appeared in the surroundings. The specks of light were converging in one place. Chen Zhao's eyes almost popped out. Could this guy really reassemble his molecular structure? Does this guy really have an immortal body? In less than 10 seconds, Balder stood before Chen Zhao, completely unharmed. Damn it, he didn't even change his clothes. Smiling, Bader shrugged. Sir, look. You can't kill me. Go, go. Chen Zhao was helpless. However, Bader was not going to leave yet. Chen Zhao looked at Bader. Why aren't you leaving? Do you plan to continue exchanging a few blows with me? Do you think I can't kill you? Or do you want to see if I can find your weakness? No, I just want to give you some information. What message? Don't you want to know what Mr. Moreau is going to do? He's in my hands. Do I need you to meddle? Fine, since you don't need me, I'll leave. Don't, I'm just joking. You just don't know humor. Chen Zhao chuckled. By the way, which deity are you? How about I ask Mr. Falui Lysander and the beautiful Ms. Ryan Wylist to answer for me? I think they've already guessed my identity. Can I really say it? Ryan Wylist asked. She was now sure that Bader was really a deity. She didn't want to offend a real deity. Of course, there's nothing to hide. He's the god of light, Bader, Ryan Wylist said. Asgard in Norse mythology. He's the son of Frigg and Odin. He's blessed by everything in the world and is immune to all damage. Only mistletoe isn't blessed. Only mistletoe can kill him. Chen Zhao looked Bader up and down and couldn't help but exclaim. Norse mythology was as famous as Olympus mythology. It was also a popular theme for movies and TV series. However, Chen Zhao's understanding of Norse mythology was limited to Odin, Thor, and Loki. His understanding of Norse mythology had all come from a certain sorority movie. As for Bader, Chen Zhao really didn't know much about him. So, the mistletoe can kill you? Chen Zhao asked, confused. Yes, but it's not a normal mistletoe. Bader didn't avoid the topic. It's the mistletoe of nothingness. Only special weapons made from it can hurt and kill me. Chen Zhao was silent. He didn't have the mistletoe of nothingness. Even if he did, it probably wouldn't be effective against Bader. Bader could tell Chen Zhao his weakness so calmly. It probably wouldn't be as simple as turning the mistletoe of nothingness into a weapon. There should be many deities like you in the world, right? Bader thought for a moment and answered, not many, less than 5. But in the next 100 years, more deities will awaken. Why? Don't you know? The spiritual power tide era is coming, and this time, it'll be a big one. In return for letting you go, shouldn't you provide some information about sleeping deities? Bader sneered. Let him go? You're the one who can't do anything to me, okay? No comment. I don't want to start a war between deities. That was the rule of deities. Unless the other party was a loner, and very weak at that. Otherwise, especially if the other party was a member of a divine race. Then he would try his best to avoid conflict. Being able to develop into a divine race meant that the divine race was definitely not weak. So, if it developed into a war between deities, the consequences would be unimaginable. As a member of the Asgard divine race, Bader had faced a war between deities before. The legendary Dusk of the Gods had actually happened. Chen Zhao didn't expect Bader to speak. After all, he really didn't have the ability to threaten him. If he couldn't kill Bader, Bader naturally wouldn't be threatened. He has the potential to become a god. You can use him as a research subject. With that, Bader's body started disintegrating, just like how he'd reassembled earlier. Chen Zhao looked at Milo Tanzik Williams. At the moment, Milo Tanzik Williams only felt his scalp go numb. He wanted to become a god, not a god to be researched. Bader added, not like that. After saying this, Bader disappeared irresponsibly. Then, Milo Tanzik Williams faced the terrifying Chen Zhao alone. Chapter 2857. It wasn't that Milo hadn't considered fighting Chen Zhao head-on. However, he doubted if he could take a punch from Chen Zhao. After all, he didn't have Baldur's undying body. Then, Chen Zhao tossed Milo Tanzik Williams onto Sabonis's back. He finally had the chance to sit on the dragon's back. It wasn't a riding position, but at least it satisfied his curiosity. As for the others, Chen Zhao couldn't be bothered. He just left Falui Lysander and Ryan Vilest where they were. There were also the remaining subordinates of Milo Tanzik Williams. Don't mess around. To tell you the truth, I'm working for that man. Falui Lysander looked at the inhuman people warily. These people were insignificant to Milo Tanzik Williams and Chen Zhao. But to normal people like them, they could basically kill a child with one slap. In fact, these people didn't have the intention to fight either. After all, Milo Tanzik Williams had been taken away by them. Right now, they had no interest at all. It was as if their fathers had died. Moreover, they could tell that Falui Lysander and Ryan Vilest knew Chen Zhao. Regardless of whether they knew each other or not, if they were targeted by such people, they wouldn't be able to survive even if they had a few lives. Milo Tanzik Williams didn't know where Chen Zhao was taking him. Anyway, he was on the dragon's back. He had recovered some of his divine power. But facing Chen Zhao, he really didn't have the courage to resist. Sabonis flew in the sky for half an hour and entered the LA area. Of course, Sabonis didn't enter the city. Chen Zhao used air refraction to avoid the radar. But it wasn't very safe. He might still be exposed. So, it was better to avoid densely populated areas. Sabonis flew directly into the desert area. Finally, Sabonis landed. Chen Zhao carried Milo Williams and jumped down. At the same time, he told Sabonis to return to the Supernatural Organization's headquarters. After entering the underground base, they finally reached the bottom after many twists and turns. I think you've mostly recovered. Walk by yourself. Chen Zhao tossed Milo Tanzik Williams onto the ground. Milo Tanzik Williams's heart was in his throat. No matter how one looked at it, this gloomy underground base looked like a place where anti-human experiments were conducted. Moreover, the silence here was terrifying. It made Milo Tanzik Williams have a lot of bad thoughts. He wanted to run, but he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to take Chen Zhao's punch. At the lowest level of the base, an electronic door finally appeared. Chen Zhao entered a few passwords and the door opened. Unlike the outside, the laboratory inside the door was very spacious and bright. However, there was no one there. It was still very empty. At this moment, the door of the room in front of them opened. Bifla walked out. He looked at Chen Zhao and then at Milo Tanzik Williams, who was behind him. Who is he? Test subject no. 2, Chen Zhao said casually. Oh. Bifla could not help but look at Milo Tanzik Williams seriously. For the time being, he did not notice anything special about Milo Tanzik Williams. He used to be Aries' servant. I brought him here to see Aries. They haven't seen each other for many years, so they must miss each other. Hearing Chen Zhao's words, Milo Tanzik Williams felt a chill in his heart. Bifla was even more interested in Milo. Judging from Chen Zhao's tone, this person seemed to have a lot of stories with Aries. Chen Zhao pushed open the door of a laboratory. Aries, Zhang Tianyi, and 23rd Blood Mary were all inside. They did not look like they were doing experiments at all. It was more like they were chatting about family matters. They sat in their chairs and chatted freely. When Milo Tanzik Williams was brought in, Aries looked up at him. I guessed that you would be brought here soon. My guess was right, Milo. Milo Tanzik Williams looked at Aries with a complicated and slightly awkward expression. He did not know how to address Aries. Should he continue to call him master? He could not. After all, he had betrayed Aries. But calling him by his name? That seemed very inappropriate. So, he stood there awkwardly, not knowing what to say. Of course, the others were not awkward at all. Especially Chen Zhao and Bifla. They were looking forward to a good show. Unfortunately, they were disappointed. There was no intense conflict between the two. Especially Aries, his reaction was too calm. So calm that it was unacceptable. Zhang Tianyi and 23rd Blood Mary still did not know who Milo Tanzik Williams was. Aries, aren't you going to introduce him? Milo Tanzik Williams, Aries said. He used to be my servant. He swore eternal loyalty to me, and then he stole my divine power. If I had fought Mr. Chen at my peak, he might not have been able to defeat me easily. Looks like you're not completely unconcerned. You're still holding a grudge against him, right? As a traitor, he ended up in the same situation as me. Of course I should be happy, Aries said matter-of-factly. Aries looked Milo Tanzik Williams up and down. And he should be your senior on the path to godhood. He has a lot of research value. Aries said in a gloating tone. Milo Tanzik Williams' face darkened. His divine power has changed beyond recognition. Looks like he tried many things in the past 2 years. Whether he succeeded or failed, he's very valuable, Aries said, still adding fuel to the fire. Everyone, I'm just a failure. I have no value at all, Milo Tanzik Williams said, pointing at Aries. He's a real god. He's the most valuable one. Aries still had that kind of indifferent attitude. You don't have to tell them that. They all know it. But I'm still happy that someone I hate has ended up like me. Aries was sitting here and chatting calmly because his divine power had been completely sealed. It was sealed by the 3 most powerful and knowledgeable people in the world. In terms of power, they could even be considered 3 extremely powerful gods. So, if it was not necessary, Aries did not want to struggle anymore. In this situation, he was happy to have another person who shared the same fate. Especially when this person was a traitor that he could not live under the same sky with. Especially when this person was a traitor that he could not live under the same sky with. Of course, as a god. Aries did not lose his dignity as a god most of the time. Even when he lost, Aries accepted it calmly. He did not beg for mercy, nor did he give up. Although he did not accept it gladly, at least he had calmness and rationality that most people did not have. Chapter 28:58. Of course, the main reason for Aries' calmness was the past few days. He only accepted questions from Chen Zhao, Zhang Tianyi, Bifla, and the 23rd Blood Mary. Most of the time, it was just peaceful communication. They didn't really slice him up. However, Aries wasn't sure how long this method of research would last. If they still couldn't get the results they wanted before then, he would probably face a real slicing study. At this time, Milo Tanzik Williams's arrival clearly took some of Aries' pressure off. "Zhang, put a seal on him," Chen Zhao said, pointing at Milo Tanzik Williams. Soon, Milo Tanzik Williams's power was sealed. Soon, Milo Tanzik Williams's divine power was sealed. Sealing him was much easier than sealing Aries. Aries was a true god. He wasn't any weaker than anyone present. Even in his weakened state, he couldn't be underestimated. But Milo Tanzik Williams was different. He was only powerful compared to ordinary people. But to the few people present, each of them could crush him with a single hand. No one knew how long Aries' seal could last. As for Milo Tanzik Williams, it was basically a seal that lasted until the end of time. Milo Tanzik Williams sat down on an empty chair. The others also returned to their seats. The atmosphere was more like a tea party. "Mr. Milo, tell us about your plan to become a god," Chen Zhao said first. Milo Tanzik Williams hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he said, "In the beginning, I found information about Aries' tomb in a diary left behind by an elder in my family. At the time, I hadn't come into contact with the spiritual world, so I didn't believe in it. I didn't believe in the existence of gods and ghosts, and I didn't believe that Aries' tomb was real either. But I thought that I might be able to find something valuable in this so-called tomb, so I sent people to look for it. Later on, I finally found Aries' tomb after a few twists and turns and woke him up from his deep sleep." As he spoke, Milo Tanzik Williams glanced at Aries and continued, "Then, he showed me extraordinary power and subdued me. He made me his spokesperson in the mortal world and gave me a divine power seed." "Seed of divine power?" Everyone looked at Aries. "What is a divine power seed?" Aries replied, "First of all, humans cannot become the carrier of divine power. It requires a special bloodline and group of people to become a carrier, such as the descendants of gods or special bloodlines. If there are neither of these, then there is only a third option, and that is through the seed of divine power. To put it simply, it is a transformation process. The divine power seed can transform an ordinary person into a young god, which is the most basic divine body. It can basically satisfy the two conditions of carrying and using divine power. "Can the divine body grow?" Chen Zhao asked. "Yes, I have a mature divine body," Aries said. "And he accepted my seed of divine power, so he can receive my gift of divine power." "And then you gave him the divine power?" "More accurately, I borrowed it," Aries answered. "In the first year, I used Aries' divine power to do a lot of things. Some of them were his, and some of them were mine. I was not satisfied with the divine power I borrowed from him. I began to interact with people in the spiritual world, and then I met Balder." Everyone looked at Aries. Aries could feel everyone's gazes. Surprised, he asked, "What's wrong?" "What's wrong with Balder?" "You don't know him?" Chen Zhao asked. "Should I know him?" "Fine, you indeed shouldn't know him. After all, they were from different god systems and didn't live in the same era. Moreover, Aries had clearly just woken up. Balder and the Norse gods should have appeared while he was asleep. Moreover, the name Bader was not a very rare name in the West. I think my contact with him was all arranged by him. I don't know when he noticed me," Milo Tanzik Williams said. Milo Tanzik Williams said with a tinge of annoyance in his tone. No one knew what he was regretting. He said that he's an expert in this field. Through his research on me, he discovered that I have a certain connection with Aries. I can borrow divine power from him, and Ares can also take back the divine power he lent me. He calls this connection the divine power hub, but he said that he found a way to forcefully reverse this master-slave relationship. That way, I can borrow Ares' divine power endlessly, and Ares can't take it back. Is this the truth behind your divine power being stolen? Ares shrugged helplessly. This method was developed by the Olympian gods. I never thought that there would be a loophole, nor did I expect that someone could use this method to counter me. Who is Balder? A god, the god of light in Norse mythology. He's not from the same race as you. So he's also a god. Ares found this result a little easier to accept. However, although Balder has extraordinary abilities, he still can't completely solve a problem, which is the carrier of divine power. Although Milo can steal my divine power, he can't produce divine power himself. It takes at least 1,000 years for a divine power seed to mature, so the divine power that Milo can steal is very limited. However, he's also a smart man. He knows how to squander my divine power and keep me in a weak state. As he spoke, Ares gave Milo Tanzek Williams a look of approval. Balder isn't completely unable to solve this problem, Milo Tanzek Williams said. Oh. He has a way. Ares couldn't stay calm. After all, if it was just a problem of stealing divine power, Ares could still remain calm. After all, it would take Milo Tanzek Williams more than 1,000 years to truly grow into a mature divine body. And in these 1,000 years, as long as Ares found Balder, or Ares asked Shilai Wenger for help to dissolve their relationship, the problem would be solved. However, Milo Tanzek Williams said that he could completely solve the problem of a mature divine body. Then, for Ares, these 1,000 years would be gone. It's very simple. Find a carrier with primitive divine power, or rather, a divine artifact. As long as I obtain the divine power, I can become a real god. Not only that, I can also plunder Ares' divine power and become a god with 2 divine powers. Chapter 28:59. Simple? Well, that was what Milo Tanzek Williams thought. Although he did not succeed, what is a primordial divine right? Can a god have more than one divine right? Milo Tanzek Williams did not answer. Instead, Ares answered, a primordial divine right is the key to becoming a god. It is born from heaven and earth. With a primordial divine right, one has the qualifications to become a god. Then, one can use their own understanding of the laws to integrate into the primordial divine right. Finally, a divine right that is suitable for oneself is born. Then, it is integrated with one's body to become a god. So, is there any difference between your Olympian gods and Mr. Milo's method of becoming a god? It is not certain whether his method will succeed, so I do not know what the difference is. Ares looked at Milo Tanzek Williams and said, in addition, he wants to use this method to plunder my theocracy and then obtain 2 theocracies. In theory, it is feasible, but he has obviously fallen into a misunderstanding. Having more theocracies is not necessarily better than having a single theocracy, unless it is a theocracy of complementary attributes. Among the Olympian gods, there are many who have more than one theocracy, but those gods are not necessarily stronger than me. Since a primordial divine right is born from heaven and earth, is there any way to obtain it? You Olympian gods have so many gods. Don't tell me that all of them are obtained by luck. There are no more than 3 ways to obtain a primordial divine right. One is to have a source. There is one on Mount Olympus, and it is the golden apple tree controlled by Gaia, Ares replied. Ares replied, the golden apple tree is the embodiment of the laws of heaven and earth. It is also the main way for the Olympian gods to become gods. However, the golden apple tree can only produce very few golden apples, and the cycle is very long. The second method is bloodline inheritance. The descendants of gods have a chance of having a primordial divine right in their descendants' bodies. This kind of god is a natural god. For example, Apollo, Athena, and I were born as gods. However, the probability of this is very small. Our father, Zeus, has countless illegitimate children, but only the three of us have become gods. Our brother, Hercules, is a demigod. He also has a primordial divine right in his body, but because half of his bloodline is human, it is destined that he cannot perfectly integrate the primordial divine right with himself. So, he can only be a demigod. The third method is inheritance. When a god falls, the primordial divine right will degenerate into a primordial divine right and then return to heaven and earth. However, through some special methods, the primordial divine right can be intercepted and given to another person. The conditions for this method are relatively simple, but there are also disadvantages. The primordial divine right of another person will always be another person's primordial divine right. It cannot be perfectly integrated with oneself. Ares paused and continued, so, comparing these three methods to obtain the primordial divine right, the first method is undoubtedly the best and the most powerful, but it is also the most difficult. The second method has a relatively low probability. If you have awakening and perseverance, you can also try it, but it is impossible for you to succeed. You can only pin your hopes on the next generation after you become a god. The third method is a choice made when there is no other way. If Mr. Moreau can get the primordial divine right, then he does not need to find other ways to become a god, right? Why would he take a shortcut? Or should I say, take a path that may not be successful? Because he has the qualifications. Ares looked disdainfully at Milo Tanzik Williams. Fusing the primordial theocracy with one's own understanding and turning it into a true theocracy, I dare not say that everyone here can do it. At the very least, you are the top existences in your respective fields, but he. Putting aside the divine power he stole from me, he is just an ordinary person. What are the chances of an ordinary person completing this fusion process? You only see the Olympian gods, but you do not know that there are actually more geniuses. They failed because they could not integrate their understanding with the primordial divine right. It does not mean that they have succeeded just because they have the primordial divine right. So, he must find another way to become a god. If he follows the first method, he will definitely not become a god. Milo Tanzik Williams's face was red, even though he wanted to retort. He really wanted to retort, but what Ares said was the truth. He could not refute it. Chen Zhao suspected that the golden apple in the supernatural organization had been exposed. He did not expect the golden apple to be a primordial divine right. Not only had he seen the golden apple, but he had also seen the golden apple tree. Moreover, he had destroyed the golden apple tree with his own hands. It had been destroyed along with a corner of Mount Olympus. Only the golden apple was left. Thinking of this, Chen Zhao suddenly felt a little depressed. The golden apple was indeed precious. But the golden apple tree was truly priceless. What a pity, Mary, the 23rd blood, looked at Chen Zhao meaningfully. Without a doubt, she knew that Chen Zhao had the golden apple. After all, she had provided the information about the golden apple. She also knew that Chen Zhao had fought with Hercules because of this. Our targets are 4 collectors. They all have some collections from the ancient Greek era. 4 of the collections might be related to the Olympian myths, so we're here to try our luck, Milo Tanzik Williams said. Chen Zhao narrowed his eyes. Try our luck? You brought the entire English gang and caused such a huge commotion in LA. You're telling me we're here to try our luck? Chen Zhao did not believe Moreau Williams' words. If he did not have accurate information, he would not have made such a big move. At least, that was what Chen Zhao thought. It's because Bader told me that there's a high chance this time. He felt many strong energy waves in LA. It's probably caused by the divine artifact. He also said that there might be strong people in LA, so he told me to go all out. That's why I brought all my people. Milo Tanzik Williams used Balder as an excuse. This also meant that Chen Zhao could not confirm with Bader. Chen Zhao looked at Ares. Do you think he's trustworthy? Ares looked up at Chen Zhao silently. I also felt the divine power waves in this area, but I'm not sure what caused it. As for whether what I felt is related to what he's talking about, I don't know. As for whether he's telling the truth or not, I can only say that he's hiding something. Chapter 2860. Zhang Tianyi and Bifla clearly had more questions for Aries and Milo Tanzik Williams. When Qin Zhao left the base, 23rd Blood Mary followed him. Qin, I want the golden apple. Qin Zhao had already expected the 23rd Blood Mary's needs. It's with me, but it doesn't belong to me, Qin Zhao said calmly. Plus, you can't pay. In the past, he didn't know the value of the golden apple, so it was just a decoration. He would put it in an obvious spot in the headquarters or grab it to play with when a child came. But now that he knew its use, it was different. That would be different. No one would object to saying that this thing was a priceless treasure. It was a core material for creating a god. In addition, this thing belonged to DDRA and the others. Qin Zhao wouldn't betray his adopted daughter and subordinates for a golden apple. So, he didn't have the right to decide. Although 23rd Blood Mary had gotten the primordial stone from Qin Zhao, her death was approaching. She didn't have much lifespan left. She had to think about this problem almost every day. It wasn't unreasonable to say that the older one was, the more afraid they were of death. 23rd Blood Mary was very afraid of death now. This was human nature. No one wanted to die. Even Qin Zhao was afraid of death. But at 23rd Blood Mary's age, she was facing death for real. This was an unavoidable problem. She had to face this problem wholeheartedly. Extending her lifespan was an eternal topic for her. But most methods in the world couldn't achieve this condition. The 23rd Blood Mary had also used some unknown evil methods. However, the effects of these evil methods weren't ideal. Some of them even had serious side effects. So, unless it was absolutely necessary, 23rd Blood Mary wouldn't be willing to try it again. There was another method, changing her life form. This was also unacceptable to the 23rd generation Blood Mary. Although she was doing anything to extend her lifespan, it wasn't like she didn't have a bottom line. However, this unscrupulous method was not completely without a bottom line. Also, there were strict conditions to transform into other forms. Take the simplest corpse poison, for example. A normal person would be poisoned if they touched it. A sniff could turn them into a zombie. But for the 23rd Blood Mary, if she wanted to turn into a zombie, she would have to drink tons of ptomaine. To collect a few tons of corpse poison, it would require hundreds of thousands of people to cultivate. Even if the 23rd generation Blood Mary was crazy, she wouldn't do something like this. The 23rd generation Blood Mary had also thought of other messy methods. For example, turning into a Blood Clan member or an undead spirit body. They seemed to be existences that could live to the end of time. In reality, it wasn't that simple. Moreover, this kind of transformation would cause her to fall from the top of the spiritual world to the bottom. In the end, the 23rd Blood Mary set her sights on the immortals of the East and the gods of the West. How do you know I can't afford it? Although the 23rd Blood Mary was begging Qin Zhao, she still looked proud when she mentioned the price. Do you? All right, let's hear it. What price can you offer? As long as you agree to the deal, then I can tell you my price. Qin Zhao was surprised. The 23rd Blood Mary wasn't even willing to tell him the price. Could it be that the price she offered was really so high? So high that even he had to be on guard? She should know that I wouldn't go so far as to rob her, right? If you don't tell me what price you're offering, how am I supposed to trade with you? The 23rd Blood Mary hesitated for a moment. Let me think about it. Qin Zhao pouted. He felt that the 23rd Blood Mary was insincere. Was it so hard to get her to name her price? Wouldn't it be harder for her to take it out? It was already morning when he returned home. Then he sent Fei Lai and the kids to work and school. Qin Zhao continued packing, preparing to move to Mingyue Villa. Actually, there weren't many things that needed to be moved. After a few days of continuous moving now, he was only left with his daily clothes. In the next few days, Los Angeles gradually settled down. Tim and Bodhi had now completely controlled the underground world of Los Angeles. This didn't match Chen Zhao's initial plan. However, this was the best choice at the moment. It was good to have a city without gangs. But this was also related to the political environment. If the government was really willing to crack down, Chen Zhao didn't need to do anything. He could make the gang disappear completely in a year or two. If the government didn't do anything, even if Chen Zhao killed until rivers of blood flowed, the gangs would still rise again. Of course, Los Angeles's law and order had improved a lot. At least that's what David reported back to him, the Los Angeles Police Department. In the past half-month, the crime rate in Los Angeles had decreased by at least 80%. After taking care of some chores, Stephen asked Chen Zhao out for morning tea. Stephen had been preparing a new movie recently. Drow Grove also came with him. Because of Lit Grove, Drow Grove had been confirmed as the male lead of Stephen's new movie. Drow Grove, whose career had been on the decline, became famous again. Chen, it's so hard to make an appointment with you. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes at Stephen. You're the one who's hard to make an appointment with. I've been rejected more times than you. Mr. Chen, what have you been busy with recently? Drow Grove was still a bit unfamiliar with Chen Zhao. The way he addressed Chen Zhao was standard, but it also revealed the distance between them. Actually, when Drow Grove was at home, he often asked his son about Chen Zhao's movements. However, Lit Grove himself was busy outside most of the time. Apart from his studies, it was the supernatural organization's business. Now, Lit Grove was an official member of the supernatural organization. His strength had also increased by leaps and bounds. He was also a leader when he went out on missions. Thus, he didn't have many interactions with his father. This time, Stephen and Chen Zhao were having morning tea together so that they could get to know each other. No matter what, Chen Zhao had helped him a lot. Because of the failure of his previous movie investment, the box office wasn't very good. The bank was already urging him to repay. Now that Stephen was the male lead of the movie, the bank immediately relaxed the repayment period. This wasn't the main thing. His other aspects had been strengthened because of this too. His career was revived, and his other aspects improved too. So, he naturally had to thank Chen Zhao. If possible, he wanted to build a more stable relationship with Chen Zhao, not just because his son was Chen Zhao's student. Chapter 2861. The three talked about a wide range of topics and were knowledgeable. Therefore, they were able to talk about any topic. Plus, it was a private gathering, so they had no inhibitions. Women, culture, money, or even travel. Mr. Chen, do you know anything about theology? Drow Grove asked. Chen Zhao and Stephen were both stunned. Did he understand something? Stephen knew that Chen Zhao had some sort of supernatural power. He and Chen Zhao had the same idea. Mr. Drow, why do you ask? I realize that Reet seems to be fascinated by theology these days. I saw that all the books he was looking for were of this type. Furthermore, he likes to go to places with mysterious incidents. Last time, he even went to the Savode snowy mountain to search for an inn buried in the snow. Chen Zhao remembered Lit Grove's mission, the disappearing Snow Mountain Hotel. Lit Grove had been on that mission for quite some time. He didn't expect Drow Grove to notice. I see, Chen Zhao said righteously. I didn't notice before. I'll talk to Lit and get him to focus on studying at his age. You don't have to force him too much, but I don't want him to go out for 10 days without a sound. I almost called the police. When the child grows up, don't ever think about controlling him, Stephen said emotionally. Drow Grove nodded in agreement. Fortunately, my children are still young. The oldest is only 12 years old this year. No, he should be 13 years old now. Didala was the oldest of his children. But Chen Zhao wasn't worried about her. She was at a rebellious age. But because of the upheaval in her family, she was more mature. Chen Zhao wouldn't interfere or restrict her too much. Didala probably wouldn't have a rebellious phase. Or rather, she would have a rebellious phase, just not as obvious. Or rather, she also had a rebellious phase, but it was not as obvious. Actually, in reality, the so-called rebellious phase was just reverse psychology. It was related to parents' interference and desire for control. In reality, the so-called rebellious phase was just reverse psychology. It was related to parents' interference and desire for control. Then it was self-awareness and independence. Then came the second kind of judgment and decision regarding the requests and orders of parents and elders. The stronger their parents' control over them, the stronger their rebellious mentality would be. Chen Zhao wasn't a psychology major. However, Chen Zhao had seen some content about educating teenagers. In fact, what some education experts said was very reasonable. When the child grows up, if you still want to keep him on a leash, the child will naturally rebel. However, most of the time, such words were not applicable. Because the parents didn't know what would happen if they let go of the leash. Perhaps parents were not necessarily the most correct, but at least they used the correct experience as a reference. From their respective perspectives, both the parents and the child were correct. Stephen, when will you and Mr. Zoll start shooting the movie? Currently, the crew is in the final stages of preparation, and filming will probably start next month. Stephen said, there's still 10% of the budget that hasn't been invested yet. Are you interested? Can I get my money back? Chen Zhao asked a practical question. If this was Stephen's personal project or Rasva's PLM Group's project, Chen Zhao wouldn't be worried at all. But the source of funding for this project had nothing to do with them. Stephen was only the director and producer. The release and promotion of the movie actually didn't have much to do with him. Stephen had absolute say in the production of the movie. But in reality, he didn't have any say in the box office. To put it bluntly, he was just a worker. For example, the company that invested this time was DSN. They had their own finance and accounting system. Moreover, they had their own rules for sharing the box office. Investors didn't get 10% of the box office just because they invested 10%. Actually, it was hard for outsiders to understand Hollywood's profit-sharing system. Hollywood's finance and accounting system could totally make a blockbuster movie lose money on the books. And the outside investors couldn't do anything about it. I can guarantee that this investment will be counted as my investment on the books. No one or company will dare to erase my share of the box office. Stephen had the right and confidence to do so. In Hollywood and even the global entertainment industry, the Big Six were undoubtedly six super empires. But the one with the most power wasn't the CEO or director of the six empires, but Stephen. He was the uncrowned king of Hollywood, the king of directors. Personally, he might not be able to compete with these Hollywood giants. But his influence was enough to bankrupt the reputation of these giants. In this business-oriented era, losing credibility was a very scary thing. Partners, investors, and even banks would lose trust in this company. How much do you need? Chen Zhao asked. Actually, Stephen didn't lack investment in anything he shot now. All the big companies and investors waved their checks. As long as Stephen nodded, it would almost be a profitable investment. Stephen just wanted to make money with Chen Zhao. Actually, Stephen was returning the favor. Previously, Chen Zhao had given Stephen a hand when distributing the profits on Mystical Island. So, Stephen naturally wanted to return the favor. Of course, it was also in the movie field that he was most confident in. Perhaps the benefits of the two were different. A 10% investment was already the largest investment share he could get. Drow Grove was a bit envious. Even as the main actor, he didn't have the right to invest. Stephen's project was completely different from the one he'd invested in before. Back then, Drow Grove had invested in and acted as the main actor. In order to get investments, he'd almost broken his legs. He begged for a bank loan and used all sorts of collateral to barely get the budget. Later on, the film had to be released in a hurry due to overspending. There were many flaws that couldn't be fixed or res-hot. This caused the quality of the film to drop. In the end, it also failed miserably at the box office. On the other hand, it was Steven's project. He didn't even need to get investments. With just one shout, all the big companies and banks would suck up to him and give him checks. He really wanted to lie on Steven's bed. This was the difference. His achievements in acting were indeed higher than most actors. But as an investor and film producer, he was a Pacific Ocean away from Steven. If Steven hadn't asked him to be the main actor this time, he would probably be crushed by the huge debt. In Hollywood, there were celebrities who went bankrupt every day. Most of them were like him, attracted by the seemingly delicious projects. Then, they gambled with all their money. The consequences were obvious. Chapter 2862. In the end, Steven asked Chen Zhao for $20 million, 10% of the investment. Actually, as an investor, Chen Zhao didn't really care about this investment. He just treated it as supporting Steven's business. Just then, two dark business cars stopped by the roadside. First, a few black-clothed people got out. The black-clothed men were about to come over to them. In the end, he was stopped by Steven and Drow Grove's bodyguards. They all wore black suits, leather shoes, and black super glasses. They were all the same. Then, the two groups of black-clothed men began to communicate. They pointed at Chen Zhao and Steven. After a while, Steven's bodyguards walked over. Mr. Chen, they seem to be the bodyguards of a European duke. He's in the car and wants to talk to you. Chen Zhao knew all of Steven's bodyguards, so he spoke more casually. Chen Zhao knew who it was. It was 23rd Blood Mary. She was in the car now. Both Drow Grove and Steven were surprised. They didn't expect Chen Zhao to be related to European nobles. Chen, I have something to do in the afternoon. I'll be leaving now. Mr. Steven, I still have to discuss the script with you. Let's go together. The two of them knew what was good for them and left. Then Chen Zhao entered the business car. 23rd Blood Mary sat across from him. Chen Zhao casually sat in front of the 23rd Blood Mary. 23rd Blood Mary didn't speak. She didn't even look at him. Instead, she was thinking and contemplating, not speaking. Chen Zhao didn't speak either. He played with his phone in boredom. Just like that, more than 10 minutes passed. Chen Zhao put down his phone and looked at 23rd Blood Mary. You still haven't decided? If I didn't, I wouldn't have come. Chen Zhao understood. If 23rd Blood Mary didn't make a decision, then the two would pretend that nothing had happened. However, the more cautious Mary was, the more curious Chen Zhao was. What exactly did she have? It was hard to even speak. Even if she said she had a divine artifact. Was she afraid that Chen Zhao would snatch her divine artifact? I found something not long ago, 23rd Blood Mary said calmly. You plan to trade this for the golden apple? Yes. The 23rd generation Blood Mary nodded. I'm very curious. What exactly is it that makes you so cautious? Do you not trust me or what? Indeed, Chen Zhao liked to snatch things too. But robbing also depended on the person. Chen Zhao was sure that he couldn't snatch the 23rd Blood Mary. The 23rd generation Blood Mary's strength, identity, and social status gave her enough protection. Under any circumstances, Chen Zhao would attack 23rd Blood Mary. They all thought that Chen Zhao had to give up everything. Family, wealth, status, and reputation would all be gone. I know, but I'm worried that if this information is leaked, I'll become the target of public criticism. What is it? You can't even trust me. Chen Zhao was more curious. What was it that could make the 23rd Blood Mary so cautious? Mimir Spring. What the hell? Forgive Chen Zhao's ignorance, but he really hadn't heard of such a thing. In layman's terms, it's the fountain of wisdom. I've never heard of such a thing before. There are at least 800 in 1,000. Can you be more specific? Chen Zhao still didn't understand. To be honest, there were legends about the fountain of wisdom and water of wisdom all over the world. There were at least 800 divine and holy waters with the name Fountain of Wisdom. Therefore, it was hard for Chen Zhao to figure out which myth this thing was from. It's the Norse Fountain of Wisdom, the 23rd Blood Mary said. The 23rd Blood Mary said, the god King Odin exchanged an eye for it. After drinking the water from the Fountain of Wisdom, Odin predicted the twilight of the gods. According to the legends, the twilight of the gods began the moment Odin drank the Fountain of Wisdom. The main use of the Fountain of Wisdom is to let people see the future? Chen Zhao asked. No, it's to obtain infinite knowledge and the power of omniscience and omnipotence. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. You and I both know that wisdom and power can't be obtained by drinking water. At their level, they were actually equivalent to some gods in myths and legends. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were the gods of this era. Therefore, to them, many myths and legends were no longer a matter of whether they were credible or not. It was a matter of understanding and not understanding. In their eyes, knowledge and power weren't so incomprehensible anymore. I know, but the Fountain of Wisdom is different. How is it different? The Fountain of Wisdom is produced by the World Tree. It contains the truth of the world. Just like how the golden apple is born from the world and contains the power of laws, the Fountain of Wisdom is the same. It's just that the way they're produced is different. Have you drunk it before? How do you know it really has such an effect? Besides, how do you know that you've obtained the real Fountain of Wisdom? I can tell if it's real or not, Blood Mary said calmly. The 23rd Blood Mary said indifferently, because the one guarding the Fountain of Wisdom was Demon Wolf Fenrir. I obtained the Fountain of Wisdom by killing Fenrir. Chen Zhao inhaled sharply. Fenrir was the most famous wolf. The one that killed Odin in one bite was said to be able to devour the world. He was killed by Blood Mary of the 23rd generation. Indeed, the strength of this group of old fellows was not to be underestimated. No matter how much of the legend was true, anyone who could defeat and kill the demon wolf Fenrir was definitely a top figure. Furthermore, even when I'm just holding the bottle of the Spring of Wisdom, I can feel knowledge constantly flowing into my mind. It's the truth that comes from all things in the world. I can't imagine what it would be like if I were to drink it directly. Then why don't you drink it directly? I don't dare to drink it. Blood Mary actually chickened out. She actually chickened out? She even dared to use arsenic as seasoning. She actually didn't dare to drink the legendary Fountain of Wisdom? Why? Is it poisonous? Odin is the king of gods in Norse mythology. He has to pay the price of an eye. I don't know what price I have to pay. No, Odin was bitten to death by Fenrir. If you can defeat Fenrir, it means that you're stronger than Odin. There's no need to be scared. Chapter 2863. From Ares, I found out the origin of the golden apple. It's the core item for becoming a god. Everyone was shocked. Although they had also imagined the use of the golden apple, they'd imagined the use of the golden apple, but they didn't expect it to be the key to becoming a god. Uncle, do you want to use the golden apple to become a god? Xianli didn't object to Chen Zhao using the golden apple. The others were conflicted and hesitant. Not everyone was willing to give the golden apple to Chen Zhao for free. Even if they'd gotten the golden apple because of Chen Zhao. But after understanding the value of the golden apple, they couldn't help but want it. Of course, you can't become a god with the golden apple. It's quite difficult. At least, I'm not confident. You guys. It'll probably be even more difficult. But someone wants to exchange your golden apple with something of equal value. I called you here to ask if you're willing to exchange. Something of equal value? That was the golden apple. The key item to becoming a god. Was there anything else in the world that could be of equal value to the golden apple? Uncle, what is it? Water of wisdom. It's what Odin drank in Norse mythology, Qin Zhao answered. Everyone looked at each other. Most of them were hesitant. They didn't deny the value of the water of wisdom. They accepted that it was of equal value to the golden apple. Of course, both of these divine items had immeasurable value. Therefore, it was impossible to really divide the price into US dollars. Therefore, the value was roughly the same, which was acceptable to them. Ruan Faxben was the most excited. After all, he'd already studied the golden apple. But he didn't get anything. He'd extracted a small amount of skin from the golden apple's surface, but it turned into gold immediately. So he had no progress on the golden apple. This also meant that the golden apple couldn't be divided into 5 parts. Once it was divided into 5, the other 4 parts would definitely become normal gold. Only the largest part would inherit all the golden apple's characteristics. This made Ruan Faxben's research difficult. But if it was the water of wisdom, it would be much simpler. Plus, Ruan Faxben was very interested in studying the water of wisdom. So, he agreed with the deal wholeheartedly. Xianli was completely on Qin Zhao's side. Uncle, why don't you use the golden apple to become a god yourself? As I said, it's very difficult. If I were to use it, I'm not sure if I can succeed. Besides, the golden apple doesn't belong to me, it belongs to you. Qin Zhao looked at Kalan, Moore, and Lisa. You guys, tell me your opinions too. What opinion could they possibly have? Back then, regarding the distribution of the golden apples, everyone had already agreed that if one of them wanted to obtain the complete golden apple, they would have to pay the price. In that case, he would have to find 4 items equal to 1/5 of the value of the golden apple. This was the only way to obtain the rights to the golden apple. But what did the golden apple mean? In the past, it was already a peerless treasure. Now, after knowing the true use of the golden apple, Lin Fan was stunned. With their abilities, it was even more impossible for them to find treasures of equal value. So far, they hadn't found any of them. Or rather, he didn't even bother to look for her. Even if it was only 1/5 of the golden apple, it was still a rare treasure. How could he find it so easily? Out of the 5 of them, Xianli had the highest chance of winning. After all, Xianli was Qin Zhao's adopted daughter. With Qin Zhao's help, it wasn't impossible for Xianli to find treasures equal to 1/5 of the value of the golden apples. President, you decide. Colin's answer was actually very negative. One reason was because of Qin Zhao's power and identity. The other reason was that he didn't feel like he had much say. He felt that the others would definitely listen to Qin Zhao. Thus, his answer wasn't important. Of course, there was another important point. He felt that this trade was definitely very important. With his status and power, he almost didn't have a chance to interrupt. And Qin Zhao was undoubtedly the person with the most power to make the decision. Moreover, he didn't mind letting Qin Zhao make the decision. No matter how he looked at it, Qin Zhao was the best candidate. President, I'll listen to you too. Me too. President, can you tell us who we're dealing with? The leader of the Scarlet Church, 23rd Blood Mary, the initiator of the Scarlet Mission, Qin Zhao said. She's on the same level as me. Qin Zhao had once felt that 23rd Blood Mary might be the weakest among them. Even the newly promoted Bifla might be much stronger than 23rd Blood Mary. Not long ago, 23rd Blood Mary had personally told him that she had killed Fenrir, the world-destroying demon wolf in Norse mythology. It was a peerless beast that had bitten Odin to death with one bite. Of course, Qin Zhao hadn't seen the battle. But no matter what, Qin Zhao wouldn't have that kind of thought again. 23rd Blood Mary, Bifla, and Zhang Tianyi. They were existences that stood at the peak of the spiritual world. None of them were kind. Among them, only Ruan Faxaban had seen 23rd Blood Mary before. However, there was practically no one in the spirit world who didn't know of the 23rd generation Blood Mary. So, there was no need to tell them about 23rd Blood Mary's identity and power. They already knew about the 23rd generation Blood Mary. In the end, everyone agreed to the trade. Of course, not everyone was willing to do so. But at least they didn't reject it. Chen Zhao's attitude was also very clear. Actually, he'd already agreed to the trade when he discussed with the five. If he didn't agree, he wouldn't ask them. Of course, Chen Zhao had to be the one in charge of the trade. If it was someone else, they would probably be swallowed by 23rd Blood Mary until not even their bones were left. The so-called trade had to be of equal status and power. Lions wouldn't trade with sheep. After the conversation with the five, Chen Zhao contacted the 23rd generation's Blood Mary. Chen Zhao returned to the headquarters and took the golden apple. He had to admit that the supernatural organization really didn't pay enough attention to the golden apple. When Chen Zhao arrived at the headquarters, the golden apple was placed on the guest table in the hall as a decoration. If Milo Tanzik Williams knew about the golden apple, he could just come to the supernatural organization while Chen Zhao wasn't here. He probably wouldn't even need to fight to get everything he wanted. Fortunately, although the golden apple wasn't valued, no one knew that it was in the supernatural organization. Or rather, the people in the organization were too lazy to tell others about the golden apple. Chapter 2864. 23rd Generation Mary and Chen Zhao met. This time, they chose a remote location for the transaction. There wasn't a third person present. 23rd Generation Mary took out a transparent bottle. Colorful lights flashed in the bottle. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. This thing looked familiar. The bottle of Satan's blood that the handsome boy had given him was like this. Satan's blood was actually a drop of the handsome boy's blood. However, the color was more vibrant and the light was more intoxicating. If one looked at it for a long time, they would feel like they couldn't control themselves. Where's the thing I want? 23rd Generation Mary looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao took out the golden apple. Here. Can we do the transaction now? Chen Zhao shook his head. 23rd Generation Mary frowned slightly. Displeasure appeared on her old face. What? Do you want to inspect it? No, I believe it's real, but I feel like I'm losing out. What do you mean? Cancel the transaction? I just want you to make up for the difference. Chen Zhao chuckled at 23rd Generation Mary. The so-called transaction was, of course, an equivalent exchange. But it wasn't just about the value of the item itself. It was also about the two's needs. To 23rd Generation Mary, the golden apple was a very urgent necessity. It was a very urgent necessity. But the water of wisdom was different. To Chen Zhao, Xin Li, and the other four, it wasn't a necessity. 23rd Generation Mary quickly understood the crux of the matter. What do you want? Fenrir, Chen Zhao said. The most ferocious magical beast in history. It shouldn't be cheap. 23rd Generation Mary took a deep breath. She closed her eyes and thought for a few minutes. Chen Zhao didn't rush her. He stood there and waited for 23rd Generation Mary's reply. Half. I can only give you half at most. Plus, I've already sliced Fenrir. I can't give you the whole thing. You're not planning to give me the bits and pieces, right? Take away the most valuable parts. I won't take the leftovers. I said half means half. I can't give you half of the magic core. That's the core and the most valuable. If I cut it in half, it'll be destroyed. You also said that monster cores are the most valuable. If you don't give me half of them, then this deal won't make sense. I didn't say that I won't give it to you. I'll find something of equal value to exchange with you. That's the monster core of a peerless beast. Where are you going to find another one? I didn't say I'd give you another monster core of a peerless beast. My Scarlet Church has existed for 1,000 years and has countless treasures. It's not impossible to find a treasure of equivalent value. Hearing Mary's words, Chen Zhao was speechless. Why does it sound as simple as looking for a few dollars in a drawer? His supernatural organization had accumulated quite a bit over the past 2 years. But the most precious thing seemed to be Haber Timur Haber's corpse. This thing could be said to be precious, but it really couldn't compare to Fenrir's corpse. At least, in terms of level, Fenrir was definitely higher than Haber Timur Haber. Judging from what the 23rd Blood Mary said, she seemed to have a whole drawer of these things. What should I do? I suddenly want to rob the Scarlet Church. The 23rd Blood Mary seemed to feel Chen Zhao's unfriendly gaze. She immediately glared at him. Are you thinking of robbing the Scarlet Church? Ha. Of course not. Chen Zhao's thoughts were seen through. He smiled awkwardly. Let's go. Bring it back later. There were some things that everyone knew. It was just a thought for a moment. But he definitely couldn't hide it from the 23rd Blood Mary. She would probably increase her vigilance when she returned. It couldn't be helped. Being targeted by someone like Chen Zhao was a very dangerous thing. When he got home, Chen Zhao took out the bottle of Satan's blood that the handsome guy had given him and compared it with the water of wisdom. They both had a similar feeling, but the water of wisdom was clearly much thinner. It felt like it had been diluted. The 23rd Blood Mary had said that the water of wisdom was born from the World Tree. Was the handsome guy's original body the World Tree? Definitely not. That guy's original body was an angel. But since he was that powerful, it was understandable that he had some kind of magical powers. According to Chen Zhao's speculation, the small world would eventually evolve into a small world. The small world would then give birth to the World Tree. Thinking about it this way, it seemed reasonable that the handsome guy's blood had turned into the water of wisdom. The speculation process was rather rough, but Chen Zhao felt that his guess was probably correct. At least the general direction was correct. As for the details, he was still studying it. The main use of Satan's blood was for the advancement of a great lord who had become a secondary demon king. In the infernal realm, the number of secondary demon kings was not too many, not too few. Chen Zhao wasn't a demon from hell, so the handsome guy had given him this. As for how to use it, Chen Zhao didn't know. The handsome guy hadn't told him either. He only said that he should slowly comprehend and absorb it. But if he absorbed the power of Satan's blood through the bottle, it would probably take him a few hundred years to completely absorb it. Chen Zhao guessed that he would have to drink it. However, the handsome guy had said that anyone below the secondary demon king level would explode when they touched Satan's blood. So Chen Zhao was curious how a great lord could drink this and become a secondary demon king without dying. As for the water of wisdom, Chen Zhao planned to return it to Xianli, Moor, Ruan Faxiban, Risa, and Colon. It was originally exchanged for the golden apple that belonged to them. So the water of wisdom naturally belonged to them too. But they couldn't drink it directly. Even after diluting it, they still couldn't handle it. Chen Zhao could feel the terrifying power contained in the bottle. Probably only people at Chen Zhao's level or Gen 23's level could handle it. Moreover, Chen Zhao felt that he might have to pay a price for it too. After all, according to Blood Mary 23, Odin in Norse mythology had sacrificed an eye to drink the water of wisdom. She had also sensed the risk of drinking it. This meant that the water of wisdom wasn't as good as imagined. Unfortunately, there was no instruction manual. But Chen Zhao could ask the handsome guy. No one should know the correct way to use it better than him. But even if he didn't drink it, he would still feel some enlightenment just by touching it through the bottle. Chen Zhao didn't feel it strongly, because he was already used to the purer Satan's blood. When Chen Zhao had first touched Satan's blood, he also felt some incredible enlightenment. But it was like a drug resistance. After using it a few times, the feeling would fade. Chapter 2865. Master, there's a visitor, the butler said in an electronic voice. Confused, Chen Zhao said, show me the video. The surveillance footage was brought up. It was an unfamiliar man. He wore a gray suit and glasses. His hair was combed until it was shiny and shiny. He had a briefcase in his hand. Chen Zhao was sure that he didn't know this man. Who is it? Chen Zhao asked. The man looked at the camera and said, hello, I'm Ningtai Johnson from Fellman Biopharmaceutical Company. Chen Zhao thought for a moment and decided to let the man in. Ningtai Johnson looked more like a salesman. His words and actions were methodical and carried a strong professional habit. It wasn't that he was impolite. He was just too well behaved. Seeing Chen Zhao at the door, he immediately greeted him with a smile and shook his hand. Hello, I'm Ningtai Johnson, the investment manager of Fellman Biopharmaceutical Company. This is my name card. Chen Zhao glanced at the card and put it away. He would probably throw the card away later. Hello, what can I do for you? Our company has 30 years of history. We've developed many popular medicines in the market. We've done research on epilepsy and Alzheimer's disease. Currently, we're working on these two diseases. Our research on epilepsy has reached a critical stage. However, due to lack of funding, there hasn't been any progress. Mr. Chen, are you interested in investing in us? Do you have any information? Chen Zhao was a doctor, so he wasn't unfamiliar with epilepsy. Epilepsy was a neurological disease. It wasn't an incurable disease. Current medical technology had a chance of curing it. There were also some special drugs that could control the disease. Therefore, if the other party was researching special drugs for epilepsy, it would be difficult to compete with the special drugs that were currently dominating the market unless it had a very good effect in a short period of time. Therefore, Chen Zhao wasn't too optimistic about this. Of course, if the other party could provide information that could make Chen Zhao's eyes light up. Chen Zhao didn't mind investing some money. Sorry, I'm only the investment manager. Our research is in a confidential stage, so I can't take it out casually. Then where's your company? Where's the production line? Where's the research lab? You should have the company's main information, right? Chen Zhao hadn't heard of Fellman Biopharmaceutical Company, so he was still cautious. Of course, there were at least 800 pharmaceutical companies in the world. So, Chen Zhao wasn't sure who this person was. Ningtai Johnson's mannerisms were also very normal. Chen Zhao didn't notice anything strange. Of course, there was nothing strange. However, the other party had yet to produce any information. So, he wanted to take millions of dollars from Chen Zhao with just a few words. It must be a little whimsical. Even if the government wanted to collect taxes, they still had to provide financial reports. Not to mention investment. Most of our research is relatively hidden, so the research laboratory is not open to the public. The production line and the laboratory are together, and there is only one branch that is connected to the outside world. It is currently located on the 36th floor of the Lyle Business Building on Huaning Street, 5th Avenue, New York. If that's all, I'm afraid I can't invest, Chen Zhao said honestly. There was no need for Chen Zhao to beat around the bush with his opponent's identity. Giving a direct reply would also stop her from pestering him. Although the other party had given him the address of a branch. However, this kind of address was basically just a shell company. There were only a few liaisons, and then a few employees. Then, he disappeared from the face of the earth. By then, it wouldn't be just the investors. Even the employees wouldn't be able to ask for pay. There were countless such scams all over the world. Chen Zhao still couldn't be sure if it was a scam company. However, judging from the other party's behavior, Chen Zhao was more inclined to his guess. Mr. Chen, our company really has a bright future. Are you sure you don't want to invest? Once our research succeeds, it won't be a matter of whether you want to invest, but whether we can let you in. Sorry, I have enough money. Thank you for your kindness. His company was already one of the most profitable in the world. There were probably less than a handful of companies that could compete with his cash flow. Would Chen Zhao care if a nameless company was profitable? Even if it was profitable, it would only give him some pocket money. Would he regret it just because he had less pocket money? That was ridiculous. Ningtai Johnson was helpless. The man before him was indeed very rich. Just by looking at the palace-like manner, he knew how rich he was. Okay. If Mr. Chen is interested in this in the future, please contact me immediately. Okay. Smiling, Chen Zhao invited Ningtai Johnson out of the manor. Ningtai Johnson looked back at the luxurious manor and then left helplessly. Chen Zhao looked at Ningtai Johnson's back and took out his phone. Alex, help me look up a company. Chen Zhao glanced at the name card. Fellman Biopharmaceutical Company. Alex made Chen Zhao wait for less than 30 seconds. Then she said, this is a shell company with a registered capital of $100,000. It doesn't do financial investments or any related upstream or downstream companies. It doesn't produce any products and currently has no tax records. That's all I've found from the tax website. If you need more detailed information, you'll have to wait for a while. So it really was a shell company? Chen Zhao pursed his lips. Forget it. There's no need to look. The people from this company came to me for investment. The information that Alex had found was enough. Chen Zhao wasn't interested in knowing more about the company. He wasn't interested in knowing how many people the company had cheated. Anyway, it was fine as long as his money wasn't cheated. Ningtai Johnson returned to the hotel and tossed his briefcase aside casually. He slumped into the chair, his expression changing continuously. He'd failed again today to find an investment. Of course, this wasn't his first failure. Before this, Ningtai Johnson had already found a dozen rich people. But all of them gave the same answer. No money, fuck off. The only difference was that some people were more subtle. For example, the Chinese man today. Just then, Ningtai Johnson's phone rang. Ningtai, how's it going? Did you get the investment? No, no one's an idiot, Ningtai Johnson complained. I don't have any valuable information. Why should they invest? Looks like normal plans won't work. I need to use some unconventional methods to accumulate research funds. Chapter 2866. Hearing his words, Ningtai Johnson knew it wasn't good. Herm, what do you want to do? Don't mess around. This is a society ruled by law. Do you still think you're living in the dark ages of the Middle Ages? This era is no different from the Middle Ages. People with power can still do whatever they want, right? No, you're wrong. In the past, ordinary people couldn't hurt us, but now, a missile can turn us into dust. That's why I need to continue my research from 800 years ago. As long as it succeeds, even missiles can't kill us. This is how we ensure our safety. But if you cause a commotion, we might be destroyed by the government before our research succeeds. No, as long as we're careful, it'll be fine, Herm replied. We can just pretend to be ordinary people. Fine. Tell me, what do you want to do? Kidnap those tycoons? Don't be silly. The risk of kidnapping tycoons is too high. Herm retorted. Plus, they have too much influence. The government will retaliate. Hearing Herm's words, Ningtai Johnson finally sighed in relief. He really thought Herm wanted to kidnap the tycoons. They were already part of the modern society. Therefore, they understood the rules of this era. Don't go against the government no matter what. Don't go against the rich no matter what. This was the rule of this era. Then what do you suggest we do? Rob a bank, of course. 3 minutes of silence, then Ningtai Johnson spat out a mouthful of blood. He really thought Herm had turned over a new leaf. He wanted to give Herm a thumbs up. In the end, his thoughts were even more ridiculous. Rob a bank? Ningtai Johnson thought Herm's central nervous system must have been corroded by the Azure Demon potion he created. What was the concept of robbing a bank? In the movies, there would always be a group of vicious or intelligent people who fooled the police and the bank security system. They would then casually leave with a huge sum of money. In the movies, it was really cool. In reality, it was much more troublesome than in the movies. Not to mention the small banks in the remote areas. Those small banks were destined to not have much money. For people like them, it wasn't too difficult. But how much money could they rob from those small banks? 100,000 USD was already the limit. But $100,000 was enough to buy a culture tank. So robbing a small bank was pointless. Based on their need for funds, they could only rob the headquarters of the banks located in the city center or the branches of the mega bank groups, the kind that handled tens of millions of USD every day, or the banks that acted as the cash reserve of the regional banks. Only this kind of bank could meet their needs. However, the difficulty of robbing such a bank was basically the same as attacking a military base. He didn't think that with their strength, they could easily rob this kind of bank's money. Most importantly, once their abilities were exposed. In that case, it wouldn't attract ordinary people. There was a high chance that people from the spirit world would intervene. At that time, they would be in even more trouble. You're crazy. No, I have a plan. In fact, I've been planning since you failed to find the funding. Herm explained in a serious tone, the labyrinth seeds we've cultivated are close to success. It won't be long before we can mass cultivate them. We can use them to carry out our robbery plan. Lost Path Seed. You should know the weakness of the Lost Path Seed. We haven't solved the problem of the labyrinth seed yet. Ningtai Johnson said in dissatisfaction, so, forcefully using the labyrinth seed is also very risky. But if we can't find the funding, our research will have to stop. We don't have much time left. If we can't make a breakthrough, we can only become a pile of dirt. Ningtai Johnson fell silent. Of course, he understood Herm's words. He also wanted the research to continue. He also wanted to make a breakthrough. However, he and Herm were different. After they woke up, they understood the rules of this era and discussed the division of labor. Herm continued his experiments, while Ningtai Johnson walked outside and was in charge of providing Herm with funding. Ningtai Johnson had been outside for a long time. He understood the rules of the outside world better than Herm. Therefore, he understood their position and strength better. This era was the era of ordinary people. Although there were spiritualists, it was still a world dominated by ordinary people. Spiritualists could use their own abilities to occupy a place. However, if they crossed the line, not to mention the ordinary people, the government wouldn't let them go. Even spiritualists wouldn't let them go. Herm, the nerdy otaku, was different. Although he had some understanding of the outside world, his way of thinking was still in the Middle Ages. He still felt that as long as he was strong enough, he could do whatever he wanted. Just like 800 years ago. But in reality, 800 years ago, they still couldn't do whatever they wanted. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been forced into hibernation and only woke up after 800 years. Hibernation didn't mean they wouldn't lose their life force. In fact, their current appearance didn't match their real age. Even their bodies were like rotten wood, about to rot and age. This was why they immersed themselves in research after they woke up. For the sake of true immortality, they had been engaged in this research since 800 years ago. They had also achieved some results from their research. These results gave them 300 years of life. However, these 300 years of life didn't bring them joy. The effects of their research also followed. Countless spiritualists formed an alliance and declared war on them. They had no choice but to hibernate to avoid the encirclement of the spiritual world. Although hibernation could slow down the loss of their life force, it didn't mean it wouldn't. Moreover, the duration of hibernation was longer than they had planned. 800 years of hibernation offset 300 years of life force. 800 years of hibernation caused the first stage of their research to go to waste. It was because they were afraid of death that they started their research on immortality. But now, reality forced them into a corner. If they didn't research, they would die. According to their estimations, they only had around 10 years of life left. In this era, research required money. It wasn't like the past where they just robbed. However, in the end, they were only doing biological research, not finance. Therefore, money was the biggest stumbling block on their research path. Chapter 2867. Qin Zhao, what have you and 23rd been doing these days? She's always sneaky. She didn't even come these days. Zhang Tianyi was sure that there was some secret between Qin Zhao and 23rd Blood Mary. After all, 23rd Blood Mary had always been the most passionate about studying Aries. However, in the past 2 days, she didn't come to talk to Aries at all. She locked herself in the hotel and even refused their visits. They would never believe that there was nothing going on between her and Qin Zhao. 23rd Blood Mary couldn't tell them anything. Zhang Tianyi naturally asked Qin Zhao. Zhang Tianyi remembered that Qin Zhao and 23rd Blood Mary had talked privately that day. He didn't know what they talked about. However, it was definitely because of that conversation. Why do you ask? It has nothing to do with you anyway. How can it have nothing to do with you? I'm just worried that 23rd Blood Mary will trick you. I'm just worried about you. Huh, believe me. 23rd Blood Mary is cruel and cunning. I'm really worried that you'll be taken advantage of by her. With that, even Zhang Tianyi started to doubt himself. If you really want to know, ask 23rd Blood Mary. If she's willing to tell you, I won't object. If she doesn't, I can't help you even if I want to. Zhang Tianyi immediately caught the meaning in Qin Zhao's words. Qin Zhao should be the seller and 23rd Blood Mary was undoubtedly the buyer. What Qin Zhao sold to 23rd Blood Mary must be very precious. So precious that he had to be wary of them. What did you trade? Primordial stone? No, you don't have primordial stone anymore. Is it some other treasure that can extend life? Zhang Tianyi couldn't be blamed for being so sensitive. He also wanted to extend his life. Although he wasn't as desperate as 23rd Blood Mary. But he wasn't young anymore. If he had the chance, of course he wanted to extend his life. Only longevity could make 23rd Blood Mary let go of such an important thing. It's not longevity. 23rd Blood Mary didn't come for another reason. If you really want to ask her, wait until she's done. You really can't say? What did you sell to 23rd Blood Mary? I want some too. It's gone. There's only one of it left. You won't be able to find a second one in the world. Even if you can find a second one, you won't be able to afford it. Zhang Tianyi was immediately displeased. Are you looking down on me or Mount Longhu? You can think whatever you want. There's only one item anyway. Even if you want to buy it, you won't be able to. You really can't reveal anything? Go ask the 23rd generation. I should protect the privacy of the consumers. Zhang Tianyi rolled his eyes. Forget it, I'll go find her. He ended the call with Zhang Tianyi. The Mingyue villa was almost ready. In the next 2 days, their family would move to the Bright Moon Villa. Portia, where are we going? Navika Lena asked. She had never been to Mingyue Villa. She had been running around for the past 2 days, helping Qin Zhao with an errand. He was Qin Zhao's assistant, amateur accountant, and non-professional legal consultant. Navika Lena was much more useful than Portia. Of course, Portia was also highly educated. However, her high degree of education was incompatible with her current job. Most of her job overlapped with that of a nanny. The most challenging job was to take care of the children. Navika Lena was different. She was a professional in both accounting and law. Boss's other manner. Boss has other manners? Of course. Is that strange? Navika Lina finally saw Mingyue Villa. It was completely different from the tranquility and leisure of Mirror Lake Manor. Mingyue Villa was located on the coastline, which meant that it was noisy. It was a completely different style. Mingyue Villa was more majestic. Portia pushed her suitcase and glanced at the dragon head in the yard. Boss, the craftsmanship is so bad. The outer shell is falling. Chen Zhao was speechless. I'll take care of it later. The dragon head had been there for a few months. Chen Zhao had forgotten that the dragon head would rot. Of course, the dragon rotted very slowly. That was why there weren't any disgusting scenes. Plus, there were ventilation all around. The sea breeze blew over and took away all the smell. Fortunately, Portia and Navika Lina didn't get suspicious. Portia only thought that it was a poor craftsmanship. Back then, Chen Zhao had spent a lot of money to hire a Hollywood prop artist to do the script. But how should he deal with it? Throw it away? It was a dragon head, after all. It was valuable, even though the preservation wasn't done well. However, even the dragon bones and dragon horns were still very valuable. But put it away? Where should he put it? The warehouse in the supernatural organization's headquarters was almost filled with all kinds of dragons. More than once, Chen Zhao had complained to West. Could he stop hunting dragons? If he continued, the dragons would become protected animals. But the warehouse couldn't fit that many. Who in the supernatural organization didn't want to use 1 or 2 dragon parts as decorations? Now, the bodies of these dragons were in an awkward position. It was tasteless, but it was a pity to throw it away. No matter how precious something was, its value would be greatly reduced if it was overused. Should he give it away? Chen Zhao thought for a while and decided to give the dragon head away. Hey, Gavich. Mr. Chen, what's up? I have a dragon head that's almost rotting. Do you want it? Chen Zhao felt embarrassed. He felt like he was throwing trash away. He couldn't bear to throw it away, but he had to give it away like it was a treasure. Yes. Lila Gavik screamed at the top of his lungs. Wasn't that obvious? That was the head of a giant dragon. You couldn't even buy it on the market. Every time there was a magic item made from a dragon's body, it would be sold out as soon as it was put on the shelves. Lila Gavich knew that Chen Zhao had killed many dragons, so he could ignore the dragon's head. Even if he didn't keep it, he could kill one when he needed it. But other people didn't have Chen Zhao's power. Even though he was already an elf, he still had to tremble when facing a dragon. For example, his dark elves had to sacrifice at least half of their population to kill a dragon. But now, Chen Zhao was giving away a dragon head for free. Only an idiot would reject it. Okay, come to my Mingyue Villa. I still have some people. When Lila Gavich brought people over, he realized that the so-called rotting dragon head was actually slightly rotting. The situation was much better than he had expected. Lila Gavich was even happier. This thing was worth a lot on the market, let alone for his own use. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 2868. Back then, Chen Zhao's dragon head had indeed looked impressive when it was fresh. But now, it was almost done rotting. It was incompatible with the overall style of Mingyue Villa. It was only a matter of time before they got rid of it. Portia and Navika had already changed into swimsuits and went to play on the beach. Navika had never had so much fun. On this high-quality beach that stretched for several kilometers, no one would harass them. They didn't need to hide here. They could enjoy the best beach entertainment here. They could even swim to the deep water. If they were tired, they could climb onto the yacht floating in the deep water to rest. Not long after, Navika Lina suddenly screamed. Portia! Shark! Shark! Portia was lying on an inflatable cushion. She was overjoyed. Looking at Navika's terrified expression, she laughed out loud. Portia! I'm not joking. It's a real shark. Look over there, I know. Don't be so nervous. Relax. Portia waved her hand calmly and turned to look in the direction of the shark's fin. That should be the boss's. What boss? Portia, let's run. That looks like a big guy. That big guy is our colleague. More accurately, he's one of our bosses. I don't know what you're talking about. Are you crazy? They're our boss's pets. We'll need to take care of them for a long time in the future. Portia had long passed the time to be terrified. In the past, she'd been as terrified as Navika. Right now, she was calm and collected. Navika calmed down a little, but she watched as the shark's fin flew toward them. She couldn't help but shudder. Although she had seen enough terrifying animals in the Mirror Lake Manor, she had never seen anything like that before. But on the sea, she still couldn't hide her fear when facing the huge shark. Won't it attack us? Don't worry. It won't. Finally, third brother leaped up before them. Navika Lena was frightened by the nearly 10 meters long body. Chen Zhao was in the yard on the cliff, drinking afternoon tea and watching the scenery on the sea. On the surface of the sea, Portia and Navika Lena's situation could be seen clearly. Just then, an inferior demon ran to Chen Zhao. Master, the room is ready, and the luggage is ready. Okay, go prepare dinner. Chen Zhao waved his hand. The inferior demon hesitated for a while, but it did not leave. It hesitated on the spot. What? Anything else? Master, the inferior demon suddenly knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Master, I want to learn magic. Why do you study magic? Master, magic can solve many things. Cooking, housework, and guarding the manor can all be improved through magic. Last time at Mirror Lake Manor, a leopard broke into the manor. In the end, more than a dozen of our brethren couldn't kill the leopard. It was Lord Raymond who took action and killed the leopard. Lesser demons were treated as servants in the infernal realm, but no one treated them as guards. It wasn't that they couldn't learn magic, it was just that their talent was really worrying. If you want to learn, then learn. I'll go to hell next time and help you find some suitable demonic magic. Thank you, Master. The inferior demon happily went to do its work. In the evening, the whole family came back. The children started running noisily again. Compared to Mirror Lake Manor, the children preferred Mingyue Villa. There was a longer coastline for them to run on. Of course, the grassland behind Mirror Lake Manor was also fine. But the grass was clearly not as soft as the beach for the children to run on. At least, the children liked to run on the beach barefoot. To Chen Zhao, this was a moment of family joy. Although he wasn't at the age to enjoy his family. Darling, your phone is ringing. Didn't you hear it? Chen Zhao glanced at the phone not far from him. He already knew who it was. I just don't want to answer it. Chen Zhao said calmly. Why? Is it your enemy? No, it's the ruler of L.A.'s underground world. Half a month ago, he was just a lackey. In fact, Tim and Bodhi had contacted Chen Zhao many times. But Chen Zhao ignored them all. They were only looking for Chen Zhao to pay tribute to him. Although they had already ruled over all the gangs in Los Angeles, but they were clear about one thing. Whether they could keep their position as the boss. It wasn't about how powerful they were. It was about whether Chen Zhao would agree. So, after completing the integration of the gangs in L.A., the first thing they did was to contact Chen Zhao and express their sincerity. That they wouldn't do anything bad in the future. Fei Lai glanced at Chen Zhao's phone. Answer it. If you don't like them, tell them not to call you. Chen Zhao still picked up the phone and asked coldly, What's up? Mr. Chen, one of my people in charge of firearms reported a deal to me today. I'm not interested in your firearms deal. Mr. Chen, wait, don't hang up yet, Tim said hurriedly. It's like this. If it's just a regular deal, I naturally wouldn't dare to disturb you, but it's a big deal. It's $3 million. That much? Chen Zhao knew very well how cheap American firearms were. A semi-automatic weapon cost no more than $300. A bullet cost less than $1. $3 million was almost the annual sales of firearms to a small country or a warlord. Who bought it? I don't know. My subordinate doesn't know what's important at all. When I found out, the deal was already half done. The other party left a deposit of $200,000 and took away a large number of weapons. Don't you deal in firearms, all pay in one go? Why is there a deposit? $3 million of firearms isn't something that can be prepared in a day or two. The other party needs it very urgently, so he only took away my subordinate's inventory. It's still far from the total amount he wants to buy. Then why are you looking for me? Do you want me to find the seller for you? No. I just want to tell you that if there's any large-scale conflict in recently, it wasn't done by me or my men, Tim said worriedly. And in Los Angeles and the surrounding areas, there are only two places that can use so many firearms, the military base and the bank. Chapter 2869. Tim informing Chen Zhao about the firearms was actually to draw a clear line between them. It didn't matter if it was attacking a military base or robbing a bank. It had nothing to do with Chen Zhao. However, Tim knew that Chen Zhao had gotten involved in the gangs mainly because it affected his personal life. Chen Zhao didn't like the chaotic Los Angeles. This was also the reason why Tim and Body tried their best to restrict the gang's actions after they took control of the LA gangs. They didn't want them to continue disturbing the peace. With their control, the effect was very obvious. The crime rate in Los Angeles plummeted. Obviously, Tim and Bodhi were guarding their own little plot of land. They weren't good people, but they weren't robbing people on the streets either. Their buying was worse than robbing people on the streets. However, it wasn't something that ordinary people could feel. Chen Zhao didn't want all the gangs to disappear. He just needed a world of light that he couldn't see. Robbing a bank was clearly a very bad thing. Tim naturally needed to draw a clear line between them. Chen Zhao thought about it. It probably had nothing to do with him. However, Amelia was still a friend and a business partner. After hanging up with Tim, Chen Zhao picked up Amira's phone. Amira, how have you been? Nothing good, nothing bad. What's up? Do you need a loan? I can offer you the lowest interest rate. Amira's professional habit. This was Amira's professional habit, even though she knew that Chen Zhao probably had more cash than the bank. This meant that Chen Zhao couldn't be attacked at all. Most capitalists had a certain debt ratio. Even their personal assets like cars, houses, and yachts weren't enough, not to mention their companies. Most of the time, they would buy with loans. Even if they had enough money, they would still choose to buy with loans. This was because they needed to keep more cash for investment or reserve. This was a special rule given by this era. Therefore, most listed companies would have a certain percentage of shares in the hands of banks. But Chen Zhao was different. Other than the 5% shares of Mountain Beer that he'd sold to Amira, he hadn't mortgaged any shares. Moreover, the 5% was owned by Amira, not the bank. Chen Zhao didn't owe the bank any money. Instead, it was his cash. He was currently Amira's biggest cash customer. If Chen Zhao had to withdraw all the money one day, Amira would probably lose his position as the manager of the branch. It could be said that Chen Zhao's current assets could already affect the bank's decision-making power, even if it was indirectly. To effectively manage and invest Chen Zhao's cash, the bank even set up an investment management team led by Andrews to help Chen Zhao manage the cash. I'm here to tell you something. Chen Zhao was not interested in Amira's promotion at all. As the old saying went, he could just deposit his money in the bank and earn interest. He signed a contract with the bank, and the guaranteed annual interest rate of the money was 2%. At the same time, the bank was responsible for the investment, and the 30% profit that exceeded the annual interest rate belonged to the bank and the investment team. If the annual interest rate was lower than the annual interest rate, the bank would have to make up for the shortfall. What news? Amelia became serious. After all, with Chen Zhao's current status, everything he said and did was to be taken seriously. Moreover, the word inform would make Amira think of something bad. I received news that a group of people in Los Angeles recently bought a large amount of firearms. Their target is unknown. Amira furrowed her brows. I see. Actually, Amira heaved a sigh of relief. As long as Chen Zhao didn't want to transfer the money out, everything would be fine. How much cash did Chen Zhao have now? It was to the extent that they could destroy a bank. For example, she was in charge of Citibank in Los Angeles. Chen Zhao would deposit the money in, and the bank would use it for investment. If Chen Zhao wanted to withdraw the money now, the bank definitely wouldn't be able to. Even if he asked the head office to transfer the money, the head office might not be able to. Then, he could only borrow from other banks, which wouldn't just pay the normal interest rate. With high interest rates, it was easy for problems to occur. That was the principle of one small move affecting the whole body. Once the news of Citibank's funds having problems spread, it would cause a financial shock or even an earthquake. This was Chen Zhao's current strength. Compared to what Amira was afraid of, robbing a bank was child's play. Robbing a bank was just child's play. Even if the robbers went to the Los Angeles headquarters, how much could they rob? Apart from the success rate, how much cash would the bank have for them to rob? 30 years ago, a successful bank robbery might be able to rob hundreds of millions of dollars. But in this era, both banks and individuals were about to completely get rid of paper money. Even banks rarely kept paper money. They only had a small amount as liquid reserves. According to the branch Amira was in charge of, they only had a few tens of millions of paper money in reserve. The value of the bank's assets was hundreds or even thousands of times that of the paper money. However, most of these assets were real estate, such as houses, cars, yachts, planes, and stocks. Robbers couldn't rob these things. So, Amira wasn't worried about robbing a bank at all. Of course, she still had to take precautions. Thank you for your reminder. I'll take precautions. Amira took Chen Zhao's information very seriously. If a bank robbery really succeeded, it would be very disadvantageous for the bank. It wasn't about how much money the robbers took, but the distrust of the depositors, which would lead to a run on the bank. The next day, Amira strengthened the bank's defenses. At noon, there was a moving hot dog cart outside the plaza of Citibank's headquarters in Irvine. There were 2 employees. One was in charge of the cashier, and the other was in charge of making hot dogs and snacks. I realized that if our plan doesn't succeed, we can switch to selling hot dogs. The money from selling hot dogs isn't enough for our experiment. If we don't complete the immortality experiment, we won't be able to survive. Johnson, do you want to rot like this? Ningtai Johnson was silent for a moment. I don't want to, he said. I haven't lived long enough, especially since this era is much more interesting than the Middle Ages. Just then, 2 modified commercial cars stopped in front of the bank. 20 fully armed people alighted from the cars. Has information about our operation been leaked? How is that possible? Only the 2 of us know. Do you think it's me or you? You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.